I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for being brave and coming in spite of all of the rhetoric and the hateful Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigotry narrative that we get smeared with all the time. So first and foremost, thank you. I'm thrilled that you're here. Thank you. I want to thank the Hyatt. Yes, yes. For those of you that don't know the story very briefly, I was supposed to speak at the Hyatt in Sugar Land, and a couple of thugs made a couple of phone calls and they canceled me. And you, every activist, and every single one of you are an activist, worked the phones, sent letters, some of you even sold your stock. God love you. And it became such a brouhaha that not only did I get to speak that night elsewhere, we spoke to double the amount that we were originally, I think we spoke to 400 and I was supposed to speak to originally 200. And the Hyatt apologized profusely and said they would give me space in Sugar Land. But I said, well, I spoke there already. They said, we'll give you space anywhere in America. I said, great, I want space in Dearborn. So kudos to them for apologizing, and I think this room is just fabulous. I think it's just great, and I thank them profusely. It's very important that we are here today. It's very important that we increase awareness of honor killings. You see, as soon as we raise this subject, immediately the knee-jerk reaction of hate, intolerance, bigotry, and so on and so forth. Why? To shut it down ASAP. I understand there was a rally today, an anti-Geller, anti-Spencer rally. In other words, it was called backlashophobia. And it was a fundraising. Thanks much to Oleg, who was there, a stealth fundraiser where they paint us as, fear-mongers, that we're raising money. Do I have to tell you what security cost here? Just to tell you, just to talk to you about this message. Why aren't they speaking out against honor killings? I am asking you, why are they not standing up here with me? They made some wise crack that tell Pamela Geller not to stand up for the Muslim girls in America, but to stand up for the Muslim girls in Palestine. Well, just for knowing, I am standing up, and there is no Palestine. I am standing up for the Muslim girls. Well, there's not. I mean, come on. I am standing up for the Muslim girls in Gaza and Samaria and Judea, who, by the way, are honor slaughtered that you never hear about. The very idea that they're saying that there is no honor killing shows their complete contempt for your intelligence quotient. We know, according to the Reliance of the Traveler, 584, the sanctioning of the killing of offspring, but it's not just that. We are talking about the murder of thousands of girls. This girl, Jessica Mokdad, who was honor murdered a year ago, not far from here, lived in abject fear of her life. Her friend, Darwin Giles, who should be speaking today, will tell you, she feared being honor killed. And she went from one household to another because they both were trying to impose Islamic tradition on her. These girls deserve the same freedoms and the same rights to choose as every other American. Every single one. Rights equal life. The right to live, the right to pursue your happiness. This is a basic, fundamental, unquestionable right in America. And I'm being derided and smeared and defamed, and I'm getting rich. Oh, really? Will someone give me the bank vault key, because I haven't seen it yet. This takes an extraordinary amount of money and courage and work, and you are defamed and you are smeared for standing up for a basic fundamental right. And I will tell you that law enforcement needs education. You see the prosecutor, Contaldo, who originally, in April of 2011, said she was killed because she was too Western. She was killed because her stepfather felt that she was not Islamic enough. And you see in every news story, every single one now, he's saying, no, it was not. It was that he was obsessed with her. It was about power. It was a control. He wanted her sexually. Well, FYI, that's part of honor killing. Amina and Sarah Saeed were raped when they were 7 and 8 in Texas. Who speaks for Amina and Sarah? They lead two lives. They lead the life in school, the Western life, and the life of a Muslim girl who's abused, terrorized at home. It's gender terrorism. Terrorized, you don't even know. You just hear about the killing. You don't hear about what went on that led up to the final act of control. Because she shamed the family. And you heard in Canada, and I'm sure Mr. Corin will embellish upon it, the father said the girls, he killed his 3 daughters. And the aunt, who was really his first wife, but polygamy, as you know, under Islam is allowed. 4 mass honor killings. And the father said that they had betrayed Islam. May the devil, I'll use a more polite word, defecate on their graves. What more do we need? Why are we not allowed to talk about this? Why are we not allowed to talk about the dehumanization and diminishment of women under Islam? How many girls have to die? You see in the UK, which is much further along, they have a forced marriage unit. They have a national hotline. They get thousands of calls a month. We need a national hotline. Because unlike a battered spouse who has to get away from the husband, these girls have such an incredibly difficult journey. You can't possibly know how alone they are. Noni Darwish. Her family will not talk to her at all. None of them. You have to leave the family, you have to leave the community, you have to leave the mosque. Many times, like Rifka Barry, the Christian convert out of Islam, the mosque spied on her, told her parents she left Islam. She was hiding it for 4 years. 4 years. They threatened to kill her. And look what the media did to her. Look what the enemy media did to her. Made her out to be some crazy Christian fundamentalist radical. I don't even know what that means. So if you have Jesus in your heart, you're a Christian fundamentalist radical? I never saw anybody blowing themselves up yelling, Jesus Akbar. Ever. I never saw anyone ever kill in the name of Hashem or in the name of Christ. Ever. We have to be able to say these things. There's no critical analysis in Islam. Ever. Honor killings is a problem. And I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to shut up about it because these girls deserve every shot, every opportunity. There must be a safety net. Law enforcement must be made aware that they cannot return these girls to their home. Can't. There has to be special help centers for them, shelters, where you don't contact the family. Because as soon as you contact the family, she's finished. We don't even know how many girls disappear. Why? Because who reports when a young girl disappears from a family? Who reports it? The family. We need to start tracking honor killings. There is no way to track honor killings. I mean, I have tried in so many different ways to cross-reference, okay, it's got to be state by state. How many girls died? How were they Muslim? How old were they? Usually 15 to 24, but Muslim wives have a very hard time, and so on and so forth. Asia Hassan, married to a moderate Muslim who started a television station called Bridges, a bridge from Islam to the West. And he was abusing her for years, and the community knew. The community knew because she was, living a Western life. And when she finally left and filed for divorce, he took a sword off the wall and cut her head off. This is an abomination. This is monstrous. Do not be afraid. You must speak up. You must look in your community. You are the ones. You are here. That's a huge first step. But I don't want to hog the mic. There's a lot I would like to say about 91% of the honor killings across the world are Islamic. 91%. So if you got rid of 91%, look how far we would go. And in the West, it's much more than that. And what they don't tell you is about the suicides. How many suicides there are. In 2007 alone in England, 270 women threw themselves in front of a train, many with their Muslim children, just to get out of the shame because it's part of their psyche too. They're reared on it. They've shamed the family also. It's horrible. It's horrible, this honor code. And we must speak against it, and we cannot respect it, as Obama would say. We have to marginalize it, pariahicize it, and make it absolutely forbidden in this country. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do next is I'd like you to hear, just to get this out of the way. I know I don't have to. But I'd like you to hear from Darwin Giles. Darwin Giles was Jessica Mokdad's extremely close friend. As a matter of fact, he too feared for his safety when she came to him looking for escape. And I'd like you to hear from him because he is the most reliable witness. When you hear from the family, the stepmother, who, by the way, is the same age as Jessica, hello, and who did not get along with Jessica. They did not get along, and both households were oppressing her. So we have to listen to the family that was complicit in her murder. All families are co-conspirators in honor murders. In the UK, they prosecute the family. There is legislation to prosecute this family. And that's what we have to pass legislation here. We have to pass female genital mutilation laws. They're trying to pass it. And according to someone who was talking to a lawmaker, they said that that law against female genital mutilation was an attack on the Islamic community. Really? That rally earlier today against this was a pro-honor killing rally. That's what that was. Because if you're covering up for that, you're supporting it. Anybody that opposes this work supports the Sharia. Right now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Darwin Giles.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start first and just thank, if we could give Mrs. Pamela and David Woods and everyone involved who actually allowed me to have the opportunity to express the convictions and also just the secret information and private conversations and also relationship that I had with Jessica. If we could just give her a hand and just really let her know, we really appreciate that. I actually knew Jessica now going on close to 2.5, 3 years. From the very first time I actually met her, you know, from the surface, she seemed as if she was very happy, but that soon changed. She started to tell me after meeting her about the issues with the head covering. She started to tell me about the issues with how her mother and also her stepfather would basically have some serious power struggles with her, and how her family started to feel that she was a rebel against Islam. She was a young lady who wanted freedom. She wanted to date outside of her race. She wanted to date even outside of her ethnicity or religion. She wanted to discover God even for herself, but she was not given that opportunity. She was an individual who, after talking to her for, I would say, even hours on the phone at times, the majority of our conversation was concerning the oppression she faced at home. And being from the Western society, I really didn't understand, besides the textbook, about Islam. I knew the penalties for certain things, but I never personally experienced it myself. And two, I actually had the privilege of meeting Jessica. And what she would tell me, really from myself, had me concerned about my own personal safety. She would almost literally have to, in secret, meet up with me. She would literally call me and just be in downright guilt about the head covering and how, you know, she really wanted to discover God for herself, but these pressures and different things and customs that was passed down from her parents, it really began to have her in a depressed state. I never personally witnessed anyone like this until now, so I know that the terror that these young ladies live in is real. And I would also encourage anyone to really also research Lena Muhammad, who just recently passed away as well, and they're thinking this could possibly be another honor killing. Jessica was someone that would really, I mean, at any time, she would want to, express, just her personally opinions about God and several different things. And given the fact that, they were pretty much forcing her to leave and move out of state, and we kept in contact even once she left and even when she came back. And one thing that would really stick out to me is just really on how she was in fear. She was in fear of even moving away, to a degree of she wanted to please her biological father. And because of the relationships with her father's side, there was such a power struggle with the daughter because they were the exact same age. She would almost make her feel as if she was shameful, as if she was somewhat dirty for wanting to, basically be culturalized with the Western society. This wasn't a cover-up. If I had two words to say about the situation, it would be conspiracy and cover-up. When I heard the actual videotapes from the stepmom, I was just completely, literally just in shame about the situation and the matter, because I personally heard this young lady's cries. I heard of how she felt she wasn't equal, and how she felt that if she didn't live a certain lifestyle according to Islam, that she could possibly be hurt. So when I first heard that she actually died in just the horrible way that she did, the first thing that came to mind was, all the times that she would talk to me and would be in fear. So the first thing I said to myself is, wow, what she actually feared really happened. What she actually feared would happen to her, it really happened. She almost felt by leaving that there would be some type of difference or change, but once there was more pressure for her to wear the head covering, she would send text messages out almost in secret because she wanted people to see that she didn't want to wear the head covering. She didn't want to be forced into the customs of Islam. And so actually with getting this, I seen the hurt, I seen the outcry from her. And I just really appreciate everyone for being able to hear this story. This is not anything anyone is trying to personally receive any type of gain. We just want the truth to be out about her story. We just want the truth to be out about Islam and just her life. Even since I've basically spoke out about this, I've received personal death threats. I've had individuals who have wanted to try to, in any way, intimidate me. I even was deleted off of her Facebook page and blocked from the things that I basically posted from knowing her. So I've actually, just experiencing this, I just really, I would ask everyone to really have a true and honest, open ear. But more importantly, once you hear the truth, to take a serious stand against what's happening, because these young ladies really, they don't have any outlet. Their families are covering up the truth, and we are the ones that's going to have to make a serious difference. So I just want to thank everyone.
Thank you very much. That's really why we're here. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to call attention to a tremendous human rights abuse that is being almost completely ignored. And I will be very brief. I am Robert Spencer from Jihad Watch, and thanks. We have a full roster of speakers here today, and so I just wanted to expand on a couple of things that Pamela said earlier. You all know, of course, that the media is spinning this as an exercise in hatred and Islamophobia, and that the earlier conference that was held today is claiming that we are blaming Islam for something that has nothing to do with Islam. And Pamela has already touched on this in pointing out that 91% of all honor killings are done by Muslims and among Muslims. And that is no accident. It is in a manual of Islamic law, Reliance of the Traveler, or Umdat as-Salik, that is actually certified by Al-Azhar University, which is the foremost authority in Sunni Islam. And Sunni Muslims are 85 to 90% of all Muslims worldwide. And this manual of Islamic law is certified as being a reliable guide to what Islam is. And it says in there that there is no retaliation for a parent who kills a child. There is no penalty. Not only that, Jordan, Syria, Palestinian Authority, Iraq, and elsewhere. If you kill somebody, then you have the various kinds of punishments that prevail around the world. But if you can prove that it was an honor killing, you get off lightly. And in Jordan, the Jordanian parliament actually several years ago tried to stiffen penalties for honor killings. And it was Islamic clerics who opposed this measure and ultimately defeated it, saying that it would weaken the family. We have to face the facts that if we're going to defend the human rights of these girls who are threatened, then we have to face that this is an Islamic problem. And this does not mean that every Muslim in the world is going to kill his daughter, but the justifications for this practice are in Islamic law, and that is why 91% of honor killings take place among Muslims. And unless and until we face that, and unless and until we call upon the Muslim community in the United States and worldwide to face it, more girls are going to die. And so it's all very well for the imam at the Islamic Center of America in Dearborn to say, well, Pamela Geller is the problem and she's spreading Islamophobia. But what he is doing is exactly what she said it was. It is pro-honor killing. It is in defense of honor killing. Because by standing up against those of us who are trying to call attention to this barbarity and to end it, and making us into the problem, he is doing nothing but running interference for honor murder. And so pro-honor killing is exactly the right term for those who have come out in opposition to what we're doing here today. This is not a problem that is of stigmatizing individuals. This is a problem of a legal code that threatens individuals. And so, with more and direct testimony about how that happens, I'm very honored now to introduce Noni Darwish, an ex-Muslim who grew up and was taught the same kind of hatred and violence that leads to honor killing.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Pamela and Robert very much for believing in us, for really, championing this cause, because few Americans are doing that. They are heroes for me. I lived it. I was born and raised as a Muslim in Cairo, Egypt. I grew up in the Gaza Strip, and I personally knew a girl who was 16 who was honor killed. She was our maid. She came to our home. Having a maid is a very common thing in the Muslim world, and they're treated like slaves practically, unfortunately. And my mom noticed that she was pregnant, and this is unheard of. Nobody ever in the Muslim world can have a baby out of wedlock. So she got a nurse to check her out, and she found out she was pregnant. She asked her, what happened? And she said the house she was in before coming to us, the man, the husband, was raping her a lot, and finally his wife caught them. She kicked her out of the house at 2 a.m. in the street, telling her that you're seducing my husband, it's your fault. Even though she was being raped at that time, she was 15. And my mom didn't want to send her to her family because she knew they were going to kill her. You see, even if you're raped, you have become useless, untouchable, dirty girl, even if you're raped. So she sent her to a government agency, and a year later, the agent who brought her to us, we asked him what happened to her, and I can never forget her face. Because I was her age at that time. I was also 16. And he said to my mom asked him, how is she? And he told her in Arabic, in Arabic, when you ask somebody, how is so-and-so, and they die, they tell them in Arabic, may God prolong your life, madam. It means that she died. So we all got shocked. What happened? And he said her father and brother, after she delivered, she was sent back to them, and they took care of her disgrace. They didn't go to the husband who was raping her, the adult man who was raping her. No, they killed the girl. I believe it or not, we heard that no one called the police. Nobody thought it was a crime. Because I grew up watching Arabic movies where girls who have had sex outside of marriage, in the movie always either were killed, or had an accident, or God struck them, or they drowned. Something bad happened. So I grew up with this notion that if I ever not only have sex outside of marriage, even talk to a man, it's a big crime. And I am always at fault. A Muslim woman is always at fault because they give you the impression that you're seducing men just by being who you are. So it's always the woman's fault. It's always the girl's fault, and that's why they kill the girls. 5,000 women and girls are honor killed in the Middle East every year, and those are the reported cases. And this fact is enough to send a message to all Muslim women. Not only, and even if you're a minority who's non-Muslim who lives in the Middle East, you get influenced by that. The message is, you better abide by Sharia or else. And it affects us all. We give in. We become doormats. We have no rights, and we give in. And that is the tragedy. And I want to tell you that we had also somebody from a village that used to tell us stories about bodies flowing in the Nile of girls. And even the little village, the village sheriff, he wouldn't even report there's a body of a girl floating in the Nile. The kids will be playing and seeing one body floating, and they just look at it till it disappears. And everybody would say, see what happened to the girls who have misbehaved sexually. Nothing is reported. Nothing. No penalty. No search. Who is she? No search. Who killed her? And that's why I'm saying, if 5,000 are reported, there's another at least 5,000 unreported. And I want to tell you something. I lived in the Middle East for 30 years of my life. I have never heard a Muslim sheikh give a sermon in the mosque in no unequivocal terms condemning honor killing as un-Islamic. To the contrary, sheikhs supported honor killings. They never spoke against it. They never said it's un-Islamic. I have heard this only in America. There is a double face of Islam. There is the face of Islam that's being propagandized in America as moderate and peaceful, and there's the real Islam that I grew up with in the Muslim world. And they are two worlds apart. And I don't want the West, I don't want America to be fooled by this propaganda. They have closed their society totally for you to go live in the Muslim world. You're an infidel. You cannot go live there. But we have opened, they have nothing to lose. We have everything to lose. We have welcomed a whole culture, and they grow very rapidly. We have welcomed a whole culture, and we have everything to lose if we don't stand up quickly today before it's too late and make Sharia an illegal, by name, an illegal and archaic and demonic legal system that must be abolished from the face of the earth. No, ladies and gentlemen, Sharia law is not a cultural thing. It is a legal system. It's part of the Islamic legal system. It's part of the culture. It's part of the way of life. And every Muslim girl is afraid of it. This young man talking about her, when he talked about her, he reminded me. I felt he was, when I was her age, that's how I felt in the Muslim world. So this is not something uncommon. This is common. It took me years to get rid of my fear. It took me years to learn to have dignity as a woman and to develop my self-esteem as a woman. And thank you, America, for giving me that freedom and that dignity. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nani. It is really breathtaking when we hear stories like that, to think that this is the country that is the bastion and the beacon of freedom in the world, and everybody's trying to get here, and meanwhile, those of us who are here are doing everything that we can to accommodate the enemies of freedom and to throw it all away. Anyway, with a first-hand story of that, it is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce David Wood of Act 17 Apologetics, a very courageous Christian evangelist who will give you a harrowing first-hand account of exactly how freedom is being lost in America today.
Thank you, Robert, and I'm glad to see so many people come out here tonight, and I'm honored to be on the same panel with several people who happen to be my heroes. And I don't toss that around as a term of flattery. If you don't know why, maybe you're with the media and you don't know why I would consider these people heroes. For those of you who are up here on stage, raise your hand if you've been threatened with brutal death for what you do. Raise your hand if you've been threatened more than 100 times. 500?
Well, we stopped counting.
And yet, they're bigoted hate mongers for thinking that they're dealing with a dangerous ideology. You don't do what they do unless you are so concerned for other people and for freedom and human rights that you're willing to lay down your life. And that, my friends, is the definition of heroic behavior. So, there are basically two sides here to the Sharia debate. There are people who, like me, don't ever want to see Sharia or Islamic law influence laws in the West. And on the other side are people who say, hey, it's not much of a threat. It's not something to worry about. Now, I'll speak for myself here. My concerns about Sharia are based almost entirely on what Sharia actually says, what's actually in the sources. So I open up the Quran and I read Surah 9:29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah. Not fight in self-defense. Fight people who do not believe. It's fighting people based on their beliefs. I turn to Surah 5:51. Do not be friends with Jews and Christians. They are friends of each other. You choose your friends based on their religious beliefs. Surah 48:29. Those who are with Muhammad are severe against who? Against disbelievers, merciful among who? Among themselves. As a Muslim, you are commanded to be merciful towards your fellow Muslims, not to the unbeliever. Open up Surah 3, verse 110. What's it say? We're the best people in the world, Muslims. What about Jews and Christians? You turn to Surah 98:6. Jews and Christians who reject the truth of Islam are the worst of creatures. We're lower than rats. It doesn't take a genius to look at these teachings and say, if you get enough people believing that this is the actual word of God, you're going to run into some conflicts with things like the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And yet we're told, no, it's no threat whatsoever. And I think that the people who disagree with me, they're not disagreeing based on what Islam teaches, right? If they read the sources, they'll see what Islam teaches. I think their argument goes something like this. David, if Islamic law were dangerous, then all Muslims would be dangerous. And yet I know many peaceful Muslims. And since there are so many peaceful Muslims, what they believe cannot be dangerous, and therefore I don't even need to look at what Islam teaches. I can tell you right now it's peaceful and tolerant, just like the Muslims we have. And so who's right here? Well, we get to a place like Dearborn, and it can actually help us learn something. Because, you see, there are plenty of peaceful, tolerant Muslims in Egypt and Iraq and Pakistan. And yet the oppressive rules of Sharia always seem to rise to the surface in spite of the peaceful, tolerant ones. And so what we should be asking ourselves is not whether there are peaceful and tolerant Muslims, it's whether here in the West, as numbers of Muslims grow, if the oppressive rules of Sharia are going to rise to the surface. And here we have an excellent place to examine this issue, a place like the city of Dearborn. I came to Dearborn in 2008 as part of a group. I was I was teaching them about Islam because some of them they're Christian missionaries, Christian evangelists who don't necessarily know a lot about Islam, so they're wondering what Muslims might ask them and what Muslims might say about their beliefs and how they should respond. So I was doing that training, and afterwards we went out to a mosque in Dearborn. So this is 2008. None of you had ever heard of anything with me in Dearborn. There was my first visit. We went to a mosque and we stood on the public sidewalks. And it was interesting, while we were there, the mosque was blasting the sermon over a loudspeaker over the entire neighborhood, blasting the message. I don't care. I don't have any problem with them doing that. It's a Muslim area. Go ahead and blast your message. Point is, if you're walking down the street on this public sidewalk, you're going to hear their message, what they have to say. And it's only fair, then, that other people should be able to share their message, right? It's the United States. We have to be equal here. So we tried to hand out some copies of the New Testament, some DVDs, not inside the mosque or on mosque property, on the public sidewalk so that people would see us as they're walking home and we could give them something. So we started handing things out. Dearborn police show up, ask us what we're doing, round us up into a little group. Then the police officer starts talking to the imam in Arabic, didn't know what he was saying, and then comes back and says, I want all of your ID cards right now. And then he spends about the next 15 minutes writing down all of our information, all of our addresses. This is kind of intimidating. And meanwhile, the imam, the leaders there, are shooing everyone home, shooing all the Muslims home, the people that we're going to distribute materials to. And so the officer finally let us go, and everyone was gone, and so we left. And so think about that. If you are a Muslim in that area, you are free to proclaim your message to anyone who walks down the street. If you try to proclaim a different message, police were going to get involved. Now, at that point, I thought, well, maybe that's just some weird police officer or something like that who doesn't understand that he took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I found out things are a bit deeper the next year. 2009, went to the Arab International Festival, and police, the Dearborn Police Department, announced beforehand no one would be allowed to distribute materials on the sidewalk. Right? In prior years, you could distribute materials, so you could go hand out things on the sidewalk. The sidewalk's not part of the festival. The festival's the street. The sidewalks are still public sidewalks. So the Dearborn Police Department ruled, now you cannot come down here. We will arrest you if you are distributing materials on the sidewalk. So their reasoning is, we're applying this to everyone. So officially, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, if you were at that Arab festival, and some of you were, you walked down that festival, you walked down that sidewalk, what did you see? You saw people handing stuff out left and right. The rule would only be enforced if you're a Christian, you show up with a Bible. That's when, hey, we've got a problem here. So think about how brilliant this is, the way to get around the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. We'll make a rule that applies to everyone, but we happen to be the police, so we will only enforce it on the people we don't want distributing materials. So since we weren't allowed to distribute materials, we decided to have a conversation, and we went and had this conversation based on something that was happening at the festival. You see, now that security had a little muscle behind them, the Dearborn police, security was doing something very interesting and brilliant. I mean, it's diabolical, but it's brilliant. Security is walking up to Christians who are just there to have conversations with the Muslims, not Christians who are handing things out. It was still perfectly acceptable to have conversations. But if they saw you talking to Muslims, talking to some young Muslims trying to share the gospel, the security in plain clothes would come up to you and say, hey, I see you have a Bible there. Could I take a look at it for just a second? I wanted to look something up. As soon as you turn to hand the Bible, someone was over there, click, took a picture, come with us, you're going to police. And then they go to police, you see, right here we have this person on camera distributing Bibles. And then you're in trouble. And then you were scared. Brilliant plan, but we actually went up to a Muslim booth that had a big sign up there, got questions, we got answers. We wanted to ask a question, whether they kind of agree with what's going on, because according to Surah 9:29, Muslims are supposed to subjugate non-Muslims and take away their rights. So we want to know if they actually approve of what's going on there. We got our answer because security started slapping us all over the place. And we left that year. We came back to make sure that police, who told us they were going to make sure that sort of thing didn't happen again, we wanted to make sure that police are going to keep their end of the bargain, so we came back. And you know what happened there? Of course, we were arrested. We were thrown in jail. I'm sure you've heard stories. We were screaming at people and starting a riot and so on. Sorry, I was there. We were leaving the festival. My friend Nabil was walking out. A group of young Muslims came up to him, started asking him very good questions. They're asking him the sorts of questions we really want to answer. Questions like about what Christians believe and so on, questions about the Bible. We love to answer those questions. Nabil's answering the questions. He's praising these young Muslims for asking these questions. Police come up, put us all in handcuffs, take us off to jail, throw us in jail. And of course, later on, that's when I hear the stories that we were screaming at people and starting a riot and so on from the lovely mayor of Dearborn, Mayor Riley. But the most horrifying aspect of everything that happened for me wasn't being thrown in jail. It's what we heard while we were there. While we were in the Dearborn jail, a police officer told Nabil and Paul, two of my friends who were arrested, that they agree with us. Not all police officers. He's saying there are some of us here who agree with you in exposing what's going on. And, Nabil pointed out that, hey, we're here in jail, how can you agree with us and so on. And he said, you don't have to tell me. I've gone into houses here in Dearborn where girls have been killed for having boyfriends, and the department keeps it quiet. I've never heard of any honor killings here in Dearborn. And yet, according to a police officer, it's happening, and they're making sure people don't know about it. Now, could he be lying? I guess it's possible. I have no clue why he would make something like that up, because it's horrible. And so we get out of jail thinking, wow, I'm starting to understand what's going on here. And, the whole time, though, I'm thinking, hey, this is the police department. It's a problem with the police department. Surely, when the prosecuting attorney sees this, he's going to throw this out. Wrong. Wrong. This is Dearborn. And then I think, well, once it gets in front of the judge, obviously the judge is going to throw this out. Wrong. They came after us. We had a 5-day trial. And just, I'll give you a little personal insight here. I have 4 children. I have 4 boys, 4 sons. 2 of them have genetic disabilities. The disabilities are as bad as it can possibly be. If it was any worse, you'd just be dead as soon as you're born. They can't breathe on their own. They can't eat on their own. They don't swallow. They move their arms and stuff, but that's about it. So we have our 2 youngest sons. I don't like leaving my wife at home with all 4 boys, knowing that she has to take care of all of them. But we've agreed I will go out if there's something important to do. It's something that we both consider important. I don't consider a 5-day ridiculous trial for my friend answering some questions at a public festival important. So this was just horrifying to me that I'm leaving my wife home to come here for a week for a ridiculous trial. And while I was gone, my wife didn't tell me this until later, the mayor had sort of incited so much hatred against us, had told people that we scream at Muslims, we yell at Muslims, we tell Muslims they cannot come to our country unless they convert to Christianity. I've never said such a thing. And to all the Muslims of the world, you Muslim women out there who are being oppressed, if you can get to a country like the United States where you can have freedom, you do it, girl. And so I've never said that in my life, and that's what the mayor is telling people that we do. And we are getting death threats from people saying they're going to kill us for what we do. Not based on anything we actually do, based on what the mayor is saying we do. And then on top of all of that, when people requested the police reports, people are putting in requests so they could read what actually happened because they're getting conflicting reports. When they actually are sending out the police reports, they blotted out everyone's home address information except mine. They left it right there. I was the one who made the video against the head of the police department. And so they incite people until they want to kill us, and then they give them basically a roadmap to my house. And I'm away in Dearborn, and my wife is scared. And she actually has to sit down with my 2 oldest sons, who are healthy, and tell them, if you hear someone come into this house who is hurting me, I want you to hide and don't come out. And no matter how bad you hear me scream, just hide, because I'm more worried about you. And that is a conversation that should never happen in the United States of America. There are places where that conversation needs to take place. That conversation has to take place in Pakistan and Sudan and Egypt and Iraq. That conversation has to take place. It should never happen here, and yet now it has to. And I'll just be honest, I live in the Bronx. It's not known for being the best area of the world. I feel safer walking down the street in the Bronx in the middle of the night than I do walking down the street of Dearborn in broad daylight, not because I'm worried about Muslims attacking me, because I have no confidence in the police here, in the legal system, in your courts, in your judges. I view them as all corrupt, and I've seen it firsthand. And so, I feel helpless walking down the street, and I'll say I am glad that there are lawyers in this country who are willing to take this on, because if they weren't here, where else would I turn? And you're about to hear from one of them. God bless you all.
Speaking of lawyers, I'm honored to bring to you today a warrior in the litigation jihad, in lawfare. We know that our court systems are being used to impose the Sharia. We know that our court systems are being used to impose the blasphemy laws under the Sharia, restriction of freedom of speech under the guise of hate speech. I have been represented by, I believe, two of the foremost lawyers in the world in combating and fighting the Sharia, Robert Muse and David Yerushalmi. They represented me in the $10 million lawsuit filed against me by Rifka Barry's parents that threatened her when she had left Islam because I hurt his feelings. I did hurt his feelings. 2 years, okay, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is how they silence people. This is how they bankrupt people. And they represent me pro bono. Robert Muse represented me, along with David Yerushalmi, against the city of Dearborn when they were running ads proselytizing for Islam. Come to Islam. Why Islam? And I ran ads, leaving Islam? Is your family threatening you? Is there a death threat on your head? And they wouldn't run them. And we sued, and Robert and David won. Of course, the ads didn't run because they filed an emergency motion as if the judge was going to reverse herself the same week. But I have to tell you that the week that those ads were supposed to go up in Dearborn, it was the week that Jessica Mokdad was honor murdered. They're representing me in New York City. You know, New York City subway system is running anti-Israel ads to end U.S. aid to Israel. Well, we submitted our pro-Israel ad that said, in any war between the civilized man and the savage, you side with the civilized man, support Israel, defeat jihad. Those ads were rejected because savages hurt their feelings. Yeah. But these are serious cases, and I applaud Robert Muse, and I applaud David Yerushalmi and the work that they're doing for American law, for American courts, the foreign law prohibition that, if I understand, is here in Michigan. It's HB 4769 and SB 701. You got to get behind this, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to get behind this. I mean, take an active role. And by the way, very, very briefly, when they tell you that, oh, we're not going to be able to get married and we're not going to be able to, again, it's deception. Unlike Jewish law, there is no compulsion in Jewish law. There is no compulsion in Christian law. Jewish law is for Jews. Canon law is for, Catholics, for Christians. But the Sharia is a comprehensive legal system that asserts authority over non-Muslims. It is different. And frankly, we need this. We need these laws. And there should be absolutely no reason why anyone would oppose, the fundamental constitutional liberties that are, our unalienable rights. So I'd like to bring up Robert Muse so he can better inform you of the fight on the legal front, because it's critical. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for coming. It's what a terrific turnout for a Sunday afternoon. That's a great, I think, testament to the incredible work that Pam and Robert are doing in this area. I served 13 years on active duty in the Marine Corps, And it was my, and I think it's important to give you a little bit of my background. You know, as a Marine officer, you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I was an infantry officer. I served in the First Persian Gulf War, and it became pretty clear to me that we have perhaps more domestic enemies to our Constitution than we did on foreign enemies. So I decided to go to law school. I went to Notre Dame. I got my law degree, and I've been now fighting these battles for our Constitution in the courtrooms for the last 12 years. For good or ill, this battle for America is occurring in the courtrooms. I'm going to cover some of that here today during my presentation. Pam mentioned my colleague, David Urashami. David and I have been doing cases together for 4 years, some of the more complicated, complex cases in this battle space fighting Sharia. And we decided this past January to join forces and launch the American Freedom Law Center. And to enter into this battle space and to bring in expertise that I don't think exists anywhere else. And we've had some incredible success during our short time and over the years that he and I have been working together. And I want to cover some of those cases with you here today, because unless you hear these facts, you'll think that it never took place here in America. But I can guarantee you that we have domestic enemies to our Constitution, and those battles are raging every single day. What I want to talk about today, I describe it as civilization jihad, a threat to life and liberty. Because in civilization jihad, under Sharia, we don't have there's no Republican form of government. There's no freedom of speech. There's no free exercise of religion. There's no due process. There's no equal protection. In fact, as we've been hearing, women are chattel under Sharia. You know, I'm a father of 12 children. As I like to say, all of them are boys except for 10. So blessed are you among women in my house. And when women are treated like chattel, that affects me in a very personal way. You know, I'm proud to say, even though we've launched in January, already this left-wing British organization, they did an international report, and they've already identified the American Freedom Law Center, highlighting it as one of the top U.S.-based organizations that campaign against civilization jihad. You're damn straight. And they also identified my colleague, David Urashami, as one of the top 12 threats to the civilization jihad, and they said he's arguably done more than anyone to fight civilization jihad. You know, the New York Times this past summer did a full-page story on him, front page, above the fold, described him as the man behind the anti-Sharia movement, and he is. And I'm very proud to have him as my colleague. No, this civilization jihad, it certainly has a kinetic component, as we saw on September 11th. You know, it's amazing to me when I talk to so many groups and they say, well, what's the concern? You know, the threat's over, right? Didn't we just hear from our administration that there's no longer a war on terror? I mean, what does it take? You know, these Sharia adherents to fly planes into our buildings and kill 3,000 innocent Americans before America wake up? But there's another form, stealth jihad, using a term that Robert Spencer has coined, that is as equally as pernicious, as equally as harmful. And it's occurring, and I see it more so in the courtrooms and in the cases that I'm dealing with, and I'm going to run through some of these. But I want to cover this thing real quick, a study on U.S. mosques. This was a study that was co-authored by my colleague, David Urashami. It was published in perhaps one of the most reputable terrorism peer-reviewed journals, Perspectives on Terrorism. And they did a study of U.S. mosques. And this is what the conclusion was. 80% of U.S. mosques provide their worshipers with jihad-style literature promoting the use of violence against non-believers. This is a legitimate peer-reviewed study. This threat to our freedoms is a real threat. It exists. And when I use the term civilization jihad, it's not even my term, that's their term. That's the term that was coined by the Muslim Brotherhood. This is what they said in an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group. This document that is quoted here was actually submitted as evidence by the Department of Justice in the largest terrorism financing trial that's ever been held in the United States, the Holy Land Foundation trial. And this is what this document says. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadi process. The Muslim Brotherhood must understand their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Those are their words. And as a footnote, one of the unindicted co-conspirators in this trial was CARE. And when CARE filed a motion to get their name removed from the pleadings, the motion was denied through every level of the courts because there was sufficient evidence presented at trial that they should have been named as an unindicted co-conspirator. Now, why they weren't indicted co-conspirators, we'll have to leave that question. You'll have to ask that question to the Department of Justice. Civilization jihad is their words. It's not something that Robert Spencer wrote in a book or Pam Geller put on her blog. This is what the Muslim Brotherhood is saying. We all know what our apologist-in-chief has been saying and what he said in 2009. He wants to hide the fact that we have a real threat. It's threatening us today. It's threatening us both through violent jihad and through more stealthier forms, stealth jihad or civilization jihad. Let me tell you about some of the cases. The case that David Wood was telling you about, I had the privilege of being the attorney that represented him in that first criminal trial. David went to the Arab Festival with 3 other Christian missionaries to peacefully preach the gospel on the city streets. And as he indicated, they went there in peace and they left in handcuffs. They spent a night in jail. Thankfully, they had videotape and video cameras where they could capture what actually took place. And I'm going to show you a 4-minute clip of live video of what transpired on that night during the Arab Festival in 2010.
Can I eat this falafel? Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
What's up?
What's the problem?
I have no problem.
Is that why?
I have no problem with Muslims.
Then why are you making all those videos? Why are you trying to make us look bad?
I'm not trying to make you guys look bad.
The man on the right in the red shirt is Nabil Qureshi, one of the
When we made the
missionaries.
video last year, we made it explicitly clear that it was the security we had an issue with. Not everyone at the festival, it's security. Then we put up a video afterwards saying, we want to make this perfectly clear. We don't have any issue with the people there. We have no issue with the people at booths. We only have issue with people at security. So I got no issue with you guys. None at all.
But you didn't say that in the videos. I was just saying the Islamic people as a community are just all bad and are all asking for trouble.
My mom is Muslim. My dad is Muslim. My sister's Muslim. All my cousins are Muslim. I love Muslims. I got no problem with the Muslim community. It was the security guards here that we made the video with.
So you came here looking for trouble with the security guards?
Why did you decide making all these videos?
That's a good question. We came here yesterday, or last year, and we saw a pamphlet that we had a question about. So we went to the booth who gave us the pamphlet, and we said, "Hey, can we ask you a question about this?" And they said, yeah. They said, yeah, you can ask a question.
I don't understand. I didn't see you at like the Spirit Festival or like the Arab Festival.
I just happened to be here last year.
If
It
last
was like
year
my first
went
time
bad,
here.
why are you here? Why are you here again? Why are
We
you
wanted
here
to see if
again?
it's going better this year. We wanted to see if it's better this year than it was last
Are
year.
you sure about that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. I think you're looking for more trouble.
We're not looking for trouble. We want to see things are better. And generally, things have been better. Security hasn't been hitting us. Security hasn't been assaulting us. So things are better. I'm glad about that. And we're talking right now, and no one's stopping us from talking. So I'm glad about these things. This is the very reason I'm here, to make sure you and I can talk.
So you're here to preach?
I would like to preach. We haven't even gotten to that point
So
yet.
preach to me then.
Preach to you? I would love to preach to
Why is
you.
Christianity better than Islam?
Because Jesus Christ did not claim to be just a prophet. He said he was here to receive worship. He did receive worship. He forgave people's sins. He miraculously healed people. He died on the cross and rose from the dead. These truths have changed my life, have absolutely changed my life. And I find it so important to let people know about these things that I will tell anyone and everyone who will listen. So I'm glad you asked the question.
Why is it as if Allah isn't like that either?
Why is there more than one Bible?
Why is it Allah? What makes Jesus better than Allah?
Who? Okay, I got a bunch of you guys who are asking questions.
I got a question for you.
So did like 4 of these guys. I want
You're saying a human?
When was
So-
Jesus decided God?
What?
When was Jesus decided as a God?
That's an excellent question.
325 years after the Roman consul declared him as God.
No, people are worshiping Jesus as God less than a decade after his death.
That's not.
How could Jesus be a God if he came like any of us came out of a woman?
He came like any other man comes out of a woman. Yeah.
So in the Old Testament, we see a prophecy saying that a child will be born to you, and he will be the mighty God. So in the Old Testament, it actually says the mighty God will be born as a child to you. And in actuality, it can't just be like a half God. It actually says the everlasting Father, Aviad, will be born to you. So this is a prophecy we knew would happen.
Right, but how does God die? You said after his death, he was be God.
That's an excellent question. What we find in the New Testament is that in order for God to take our sins away from us, he can't just wave them away. If God were just to wave away sins, he wouldn't be a just God. So he takes our sins upon himself. He says, all right, I can't just wave these sins away. That wouldn't make me a just God. I'm going to pay those sins for you. That's how much he loves us. And so he comes into the world as a man, and he takes our sins for us. He does it all voluntarily. He doesn't have to do any of this.
Have you met Jesus yourself?
Say again?
Not that.
These are great questions, guys. I'm loving this. Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
Where in the Bible says, can you find in the Bible where it says, when Jesus says, I am God, worship me?
Well, in the Bible, when people...
I'll give you $100 in any Bible. There's 80 of them. If you find me...
Okay.
There's 80 Bibles, but there's only one.
Let me...
They changed it.
Okay. Are you legally allowed to take this mic?
Let go of the microphone.
Are you legally allowed to take this mic?
Yes. Let
You
go
are?
of the microphone.
Okay.
That microphone that Nabil Qureshi had didn't amplify sound. It was simply for the video recorder. So that conversation was normal voice conversation on a city street. That is quintessential First Amendment protected activity. I mean, in fact, that was about as peaceful as one of the witnesses testified during the trial. It was almost like a classroom session. Nabil was taking peaceful questions from these Muslims who had very good questions, and he had very good answers. And what was his crime? Breach of peace. Again, I had the privilege of representing all four in the criminal trial in Dearborn, and after a week trial, that video is what I showed in my closing argument. And after I showed that video, I turned to the jury and I said, did what you just witnessed there, what you just saw, did that happen in a city street in the United States of America? Thankfully, they were all acquitted. And David Yerushalmi and I, we turned around, we drafted a 96-page civil rights lawsuit. We sued the mayor, we sued the city of Dearborn, we sued 17 police officers, we sued the chief of police, and we sued 2 Arab Festival workers. And that litigation is ongoing. I like our chances. Here's a case many of you may not know that much about. In fact, this was a case where David and I started working together back in 2008. How many of you out here realize that you are the primary shareholder of AIG? The federal government owns the federal government owns 92% of AIG through taxpayer dollars. AIG also happens to be the world leader in Sharia-compliant financing. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Sharia-compliant financing, but first with AIG. When things were going awry in the in our economy back in 2008, the Feds gave AIG $85 billion in loans. Shortly after that, we passed the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, a congressional funding statute, where we then gave them $40 billion, which replaced some of that $85 billion. And then that following April, we gave them another $30 billion. The first $40 billion came in November. Around December, AIG announced to its shareholders through a press release from its New York office that it was now opening up its Sharia-compliant businesses in the United States. At the same time, the Department of Justice was having an Islamic Finance 101 seminar for all its policyholders back in Washington, D.C., lauding all the benefits of Sharia-compliant financing. Under Sharia-compliant financing, they can only invest in things that are Sharia adherent, that promote Islam. In fact, AIG, meaning you, the federal taxpayers, hires a Sharia advisory board, which is made up of these imams who make determinations of how the money should be invested. A certain percentage of that investment, the profits, has to come off as a zakat, a religious tax. And those religious tax can only go to fund pro-Islamic charitable organizations. It has to be purified. organizations such as the Holy Land Foundation. Many of these organizations promote Hezbollah and Hamas. So you, as federal taxpayers, have given $70 billion in tax money to prop up and to own AIG, and now you have the sovereign engaged in not only a religious practice, which violates the Establishment Clause, but a religious practice that has national security concerns. Over a year's worth of litigation and discovery, once we filed this lawsuit, the Department of Justice immediately filed a motion to dismiss. And we defeated that. In fact, the judge's ruling was phenomenal. It was a very courageous ruling. So we had a year to conduct discovery and to prove our case, and we did. In fact, we showed at a minimum $153 million of federal tax money going directly to those businesses. Surprisingly, the federal judge who ruled in our favor the first time around, it was almost like a different judge had written the opinion. He actually said in his opinion, $153 million out of $70 billion, well, that's de minimis. De minimis? Can you imagine $153 million going to a Catholic school? I just argued this case before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit last Friday. We drew a fairly hostile judge. In fact, one of the judges said, "Well, this is just like a public school serving fish on Fridays for the Catholics." It's nothing like that. In fact, the Department of Justice attorney who argued against me on the other side kept referring it to as Sharia law. Well, we got about a year before a decision will come down in that case. And I can tell you one thing. After deposing some of the top-level Treasury officials who were responsible for this entire bailout of AIG, the federal government has no clue where their money went. No clue. And one of the problems here is AIG uses what's called consolidated financing, meaning all the money goes into one pool and it's all commingled, and yet there's no restrictions on any of your taxpayer money going to pay the salaries of these imams, who, by the way, some of them are pretty bad actors. One of them, his dad is fairly notorious as being someone who's called for a violent jihad against the West. Well, he's on the taxpayer's payroll working for AIG, among these other imams. I guarantee you that zakat money is not going to go to the American Freedom Law Center and help support any of the work that David Urashami and I are doing. But you as taxpayers now own 92% of AIG, and you're funding all this with your money, $70 billion worth. Here's a case that really bothers me personally. Jesse Nieto, he was a Marine. A Marine, did 2 combat tours in Vietnam, a retired Marine gunnery sergeant. He retired sometime late in 1980. He then began working at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina as a civilian employee. I did two tours with Camp Lejeune, spent 6 years of my life living down there. Gunny Nieto's oldest son happened to be on the USS Cole as a sailor. He was one of the sailors that was killed during the terrorist bombing of the USS Cole. Obviously, as a father, he grieved over the loss of his son. One of the ways that he expressed and mourned, if you look at his license plate, his official North Carolina license plate is USS Cole. He had those decals, "We died, they rejoiced." No quarter for Islamic terrorists. Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune banned his vehicle from coming on the base because of those decals. They had gotten a complaint. The Marine Corps installation banned them. They told the gunny, you either remove those decals or you scrape off your base decal, which is what allows him to go on the military installations. He said, "Sir, I'm not going to remove those decals." So he went out there with the hand scraper and he scraped off the decals. And they issued an order to him that he wasn't allowed to bring that vehicle on any military or federal installation. So he couldn't bring his vehicle back on base where he worked, where he was a retired Marine, had access to all the health care and everything else. He couldn't go visit his son's grave marker at Arlington National Cemetery in that vehicle. He couldn't go down to Virginia to the naval base where the Cole Memorial is because of those decals. I filed a federal civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Gunny Nieto and the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina, and the judge ruled in our favor. He ordered the base to allow him back on the vehicle. I got to tell you, that was one of the happiest calls I ever made to Gunny Nietos when I got the word, when he got the electronic notice that the judge ruled against the Camp Lejeune, held that it was viewpoint discrimination. When I called Gunny, I could tell he was teared up and he was crying on the other end of the phone. And this is a combat Marine. It meant so much to him. That picture there is him going back on base with his vehicle. I said, Gunny, get your vehicle, bring it in front of the Camp Lejeune sign, take some pictures and send it to me. And he did. Here's one of the cases, Pam Geller, Robert Spencer, and AFDI, the American Freedom Defense Initiative, some of David and my favorite clients, because as you know, Pam, she's always soft-spoken and never want to cause any controversy. Love representing Pam. She mentioned this one already. She wanted to run this advertisement on the Detroit buses. And they told her she couldn't. They wouldn't give her a reason why, they just told her she couldn't. It was okay, though, for them to run this advertisement. Don't believe in God. So the atheist advertisement is okay. But the one addressing Islam is not okay. And in fact, even this atheist advertisement was vandalized. They had vehicles that were being literally harmed, physically damaged, and yet they just kept putting it back up and they had no problem with it. Well, our federal judge here in Detroit ruled in our favor once again. Told them they had to put the ads up. The Detroit bus agency has still refused to do that, and they've appealed up. The case is now pending before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, but we like our chances. Right now we have an injunction that the judge won't enforce, but we still want, and I fully expect to win on appeal in the Sixth Circuit. Same thing happened in the AFDI versus MTA in New York. Although there was a couple of other frolic and detours in between, down in Miami and one other stop in New York where just the threat of suing them, where they backed down, they allowed the ads to run. But here the the MTA dug in their heels. This was the advertisement Pam wanted to run. As she indicated, the MTA accepted these anti-Israel advertisements, one from a Palestinian group, which essentially said, look, if you're on the side of Palestine in this battle, this Palestinian-Israeli conflict, then you're on the side of justice and you're on the side of peace. So if you're on the side of justice and you're on the side of peace, what's on the other side? Right, it must be unjust, it must be violent. Well, when Pam wanted to run this advertisement, the MTA told them that it was prohibited because it was demeaning speech. Apparently it's demeaning to call those who engage in violent jihad against innocent Israelis savages. And obviously that line is from Ayn Rand's book as well, Atlas Shrugs. Well, David and I, we had a 4-hour hearing in a federal court in downtown Manhattan on April 3rd. And after that hearing, I'm pretty convinced, even though we had a pretty hardcore liberal judge, he's going to rule in our favor. In fact, when you have a judge at the end turn to your opposing counsel and say, how much time do you think you're going to need to appeal my ruling? You have a good idea where you're going to stand. You know, as mentioned, American Laws for American Courts, that model legislation was drafted by my colleague, David Urashami. And any time this is brought up, in fact, it's been passed in 3 states and it's pending in dozens of other states. And any time that American Laws for American Courts shows up in the media or it shows up in any of these legislative halls, immediately you have CARE and the other groups going out there claiming that it's, Islamophobia, it's an attack on Islam, and nothing could be further. And let me give you a little bit of facts, because I know the CARE and these other organizations don't like to deal with facts. American Laws for American Courts was modeled off of federal legislation, which was recently passed. There was this phenom going on called libel tourism, where in foreign countries, they certainly don't, most countries don't have the First Amendment protections like we have. So when people write books like Robert Spencer or Pam Geller and that are expressing opinions that people don't like, in some of these foreign countries, they get sued. They get sued for libel and they get sued for defamation. And what was happening is they would take these foreign judgments, bring them into U.S. courts, and enforce them under these comity principles. Not comity. And so the federal government finally woke up and they passed legislation saying that if any foreign law or foreign judgment, if it was going to be enforced in our courts, would violate our fundamental right to freedom of speech as protected by the First Amendment, it's null and void and it cannot be used. What David Yerushalmi has done is essentially take that model legislation and expand it. Not so that it is just the First Amendment, but if you have a foreign law or a foreign judgment that wants to be enforced in our state courts that not only violates our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, but violates our right to free exercise of religion, that violates equal protection, that violates due process, it can't be enforced. That is all the law does. It doesn't even mention Sharia. But as one example, in New Jersey, there was a wife, I believe, was trying to get a temporary restraining order from a husband who was treating her very brutally. I don't even want to go into the details of what it was. When he went to the trial court level, his argument to the judge was, look, I'm a Muslim, this is part of my religion, this is part of Sharia, my wife is my property. And the judge ruled in his favor. Thankfully, the case was appealed to the appellate court and it was reversed. The Center for Security Policy, whom we work with very closely, Frank Gaffney, some of you probably know about the tremendous work that they're doing. They have a whole website with all the cases. They did a survey of how the pernicious influence of foreign laws is having an effect on our Constitution and our laws. And all the American laws from American courts does is what it says, is that here in the United States, American law applies. Not Sharia, not any other foreign law, but American laws. And the primary law, the supreme law of our land, is the United States Constitution. As you can see, and I hope I've been able to convey to you today, that this threat, this civilization jihad, is a real threat. It's a real threat not only to our physical safety, as we saw in 9/11, but also to our way of life, to our constitutional freedoms. I'm very proud to be part of these seminars that Pam and Robert have been putting on, because I think they've done more than any two people that I've seen to inform Americans about this threat. And just to wrap it up, I'd like to point out the Center for Security Policy and Frank Gaffney has put together this education series on the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's a video series that's available to you online. You can go to our website and you can see the first increment of that, but it's critically important that we become aware of what these threats are, and I applaud you as well for spending your Sunday afternoon to listen to us, to hopefully become better educated about these issues and to pass it on. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Let me just ask you a question. This is nothing new, right? You've heard about all these stories that Robert Muse and David Wood have told. You've seen them on ABC and NBC and CBS, right? You've seen them on Fox all over the place, right? What a funny thing. Isn't that odd? And actually, it's not odd at all. Obviously, we all know that in the United States, right now, the mainstream media, for whatever reason, is completely complicit with the Sharia initiatives that are trying to advance Islamic law and to assert the principle that wherever Islamic law and American law conflict, it's American law that has to give way. In Islamic law, it is forbidden for non-Muslims to proselytize among Muslims. It's not forbidden in the United States for Christians to preach Christianity. So what Dearborn was doing to David Wood and Nabil Qureshi and the others was enforcing Islamic law upon them. Now, this should have been front-page banner headlines in the New York Times and the Detroit Free Press and everywhere else. This should have been first lead story all week on all the top news channels, because this is a story about our fundamental rights. And instead, if they reported it all, if it got into the free press at all, you can be sure it was about Islamophobia. And it was about hate speech. Well, you saw Nabil, you saw the video. He wasn't preaching hate, and neither are we. We are preaching the defense of our rights. We are preaching freedom and equality of rights for all people. There's nothing hateful about saying we want everybody to be subject to the same law and the same responsibilities. And everyone have the same rights under the law. Oh, how hateful. But anyway, the thing is, the media we know is nowhere. The media, as Pamela has dubbed it, is the enemy, is on the other side. As a matter of fact, we have to leave the country to find anyone with a prominent voice who has the courage to speak about these things honestly. And I'm very happy to say he's with us here now. Yay. Michael Koren is the host of a television show on the excellent Sun TV network in Canada. He is one of the very few people in the media who has the courage to take on these issues, to discuss them fully and honestly, without the cant, without the obfuscation, without the denial, and without the propaganda that the mainstream media steadily subjects us to when it comes to issues of how Islamic law is threatening our freedoms. And so it is with great pleasure and honor I introduce to you Michael Koren.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very nice. A bit more if you like. I'm fine with that. Thank you for inviting me to your lovely little country. As an Englishman, I've always wanted to say that to Americans. And as a Canadian, I can. Just explain a little bit about my background, because now, by the way, I have to establish that you can understand me because I speak English properly. And you're American. So I'm from England originally. I've been in Canada half my life. I was a journalist in the UK. And the only reason I ended up in Canada is because, golly, back in 1986, I was at the University of Tirana, as they call it. I was invited over to give a lecture, and at the party, the boring conference, but at a party at the end of the conference, this very beautiful woman came up to me, and she must have been drunk. She said, "You're amazing. You're amazing." And thinking this may never happen again, I married her. And I was quite right, because it hasn't happened ever again. So that is how I got to Canada. But, you know, I grew up in Britain in a little town called Ilford, which is where London and Essex meet. There's nothing, Ilford, anonymous. But I went to the local state school. It was very nice. You know, this is Britain. We had free education and health care and the Queen and dentistry. No, not the last. It was a lovely way to grow up with the great benefits of Britain in the 1960s and 1970s. There was a young man who grew up 3 streets away from me, but my father drove a cab. Those black cabs in England. We weren't particularly wealthy. He did have money, this young man who grew up just 3 streets away from me. So he went to the local private school. His parents could afford that. He had the best of everything Britain could give, as North America gives, tolerance and pluralism and respect. No, I'm serious about that. No, I'm not. This is not a joke. We are the post-Christian world. The world established on Christianity is a light unto the rest of the universe. Britain, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe. What do these all have in common? Pragmatism? Liberalism? No, Christianity. But anyway, he grew up with all the benefits of the United Kingdom. He went on, after his private education, to be a member of a gang who kidnapped Danny Pearl and cut his head off. Not, of course, before they had made him confess and admit to being a Jew, and then they held his severed head up to the camera as a warning to others. I'm sure the oppression and the injustice and the poverty that young man had grown up in turned him into a murderer, not his religion. Anyway, let me talk to you a little about what goes on in Canada. Now, I feel almost embarrassed to be here. What I've heard here, I mean, what can I say? I thought I knew about what Islamic radicalism, Sharia law, the strict interpretation of the Muslim faith led to. But what I've heard here, I thought Canada was in bad shape. What happened, especially in that discussion of the Christian gospel is beyond belief. A young woman, I don't know if she's in the room now, a young woman from the Arab American news station said to me outside, and she was very nervous, and I felt for her, she was shaking. She said, "Do you think Dearborn is the right place for this conference?" I said, "I'm not really sure. Let me change that answer. Yes, it is. Yes, it is the right place for this conference." Good Lord, people have died for the freedoms we've taken for granted for so long, and that should happen in a city? I'm baffled. But it's not confined, of course, to this country. Let me tell you about a man called Mark Harding. Mark Harding is a criminal. Mark Harding is a criminal. He can't come to your country. He can't cross the border because he's been convicted of a crime. Now, if you met Mark Harding, if you met him, he's a big sort of teddy bear of a guy, rather simple fellow, really. I don't say that in a pejorative way. He's a lovely man, but I think he would have been a pretty basic fellow in many ways. He doesn't claim to be a great thinker, a deep intellectual, thank the Lord. He's just a lovely fellow. But he is also a criminal, and he cannot travel across the border. What did he do? Well, some years ago, he decided that he would hand out some leaflets close to a Muslim school outlining the way Christians and other minorities are treated in the Islamic world. This is not a point of debate. It's not a fantasy. It's not a myth. As we speak, as I speak to you now, another Christian is being beaten, raped, murdered for being a Christian in the Islamic world. It's a fact. It's an open wound, festering. And he handed out these leaflets. There was no foul language, no pornography, no naked women, no insults, just listing some of the awful things that have been done to Christians in the Islamic heartland and the Islamic homeland. He was charged with a hate crime. He is so far the only man in Ontario to be convicted of a hate crime. He was found guilty of having an opinion. His sentence was to perform community service in the local Islamic community center, which he said, "I will do with great love and pleasure." He said, "I will happily clean the toilets. I will happily clean the toilets for other people made in the image of God." And they said, "No, you won't. You will sit down and 3 Muslim leaders will lecture you about the truth of Islam. And if you object to what they say, if you argue with them about what they say, you will have broken the sentence regulations and you will go to prison." In other words, a man who dared to tell the truth about the persecution of Christians in Pakistan and Sudan and Egypt and Gaza was told, "You will now listen to an indoctrination session about Islam, and if you object, we put you in jail with the thugs and the rapists and the murderers." He was on my show, and he's not an overly emotional man. He sat there, and I said, "How are you doing now?" And he said, "Not bad, but..." And then he broke down. And he said, "I had a heart attack. The stress, I had a heart attack," he said. "And I take 40 different tablets a day to keep me alive, but I'm okay." And then he recovered his dignity. Not that he'd ever lost it. And just looked at the camera. That's happening in Canada. Let me tell you about a public school. We have no separation of church and state, as you have here, but effectively we do. And we have a public education system. Schools where if you dare to talk about Christianity, believe me, you'll be in big trouble. They've just voted to ban Gideon Bibles from a school system, because after all, if any child is given a Gideon Bible, well, all hell will break loose. So that can't be done. But in this public school, funded by the public, they've decided that one day a week, it's mosque time. And the cafeteria, classes disrupted, so the cafeteria is turned into a mosque where boys and girls are separated, and at the very back, it's the young women who are menstruating because they obviously are filthy and they can't be anywhere near even the girls who are in the second row. So they're way at the back. All on public funding simultaneously. If you dare to mention Christianity in one of these schools, you'll be sent home with a very angry note to your parent. You've probably heard of Ezra Levant. You heard of Ezra Levant? Yes. I'd like to say he was a great man, but I know him too well. No, he's a great man. And he also has a show on Sun News. And I know most of you can't get Sun News in the United States, but please watch on the various blogs and websites and on YouTube, because we won't hold back until they drag us off screaming and kicking, and boy, we will kick and scream and fight and bite and pinch and whatever. will carry on speaking the truth. Ezra was charged under a blasphemy law. Now, they didn't call it that, because even they are not quite that stupid. Ezra's a wonderful guy who survives, it seems to me, and I work next to him, on a diet of Red Bull and Red Bull. He had a small magazine in Western Canada, and he decided that, unlike everyone else pretty much in media, he would print the cartoons of Muhammad by Kurt Vestergaard. By the way, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Kurt Vestergaard and spending time with him. Kurt Vestergaard, the Danish cartoonist, he's an anarchist. He's really a left-wing anarchist. He's made more fun of Christianity over the years than he ever did of Islam, of course. And the cartoon he drew of Muhammad was really quite innocuous, but even if it wasn't, tough luck if it wasn't. What's the cartoon meant to be? It's meant to be a cartoon, okay? Yeah. So the media, of course, would not print the cartoon. The great New York Times. We know about the great New York Times. We're not going to run the cartoon because we feel we have the literary ability to depict the cartoon in our words. Terrific. But then when you wrote about a picture of the Virgin Mary covered in excrement, at that point suddenly you couldn't describe it in words and you had to run the picture. What happened to their journalistic ability? So the cowards at the New York Times, who were too physically frightened to run the cartoon, and this happened everywhere. We have a so-called conservative newspaper that was about to run the cartoon in Canada. They took a security costing, and they concluded it wasn't worth the money. It would have cost too much money to make the building safe. We now decide morality and journalistic integrity on how much it'll cost to keep your staff safe from violence and threats. But Ezra said, nope, I'm going to run the cartoon. He ran the cartoon. Got in real trouble. And then it got even worse. He went on radio in Calgary, Alberta, to argue with a local Islamic leader. Both on radio together, and they argued about Islam. End of the interview, end of the session. The Islamic leader went to the police and said, I want this man charged. He said nasty things about Islam. And the police said, I'm afraid we don't do that in Canada. Yet, I'm afraid we don't do that in Canada. So he went to the local Human Rights Commission. And I've seen it. He scribbled on a piece of paper. Just scribbled on a piece of paper. And the Human Rights Commission said, well, take that case. And they prosecuted Ezra, and they wouldn't let it go, and it went on for years and cost huge amounts of money. The man who brought the prosecution never had to even turn up for any session. End for him. Ezra was given no legal representation. But being Ezra and surviving on Red Bull, he said, I'm not going to give in. And he fought the case, and he fought the case, and he had a camera set up, and he sat there with his human rights commissioner, and he said to her, you are a thug. Your employers are thugs. You're a bully. You're a fascist, and I'm not going to back down. And God bless him for that. And he won. Yes. And he won. So we are fighting back. But let me talk about the specific. Oh, I have to say this. Do you get Little Mosque on the Prairie in the US? Do you get that show? You do? Because it's made by something called the CBC. Men used to run away to sea, now they run away to the CBC. The CBC is our publicly funded broadcaster that seems intent on doing all it can to destroy Christianity and decency and civility, and we're the anti-CBC, we're the alternative. You know, it's like if you're terribly ill, you take us, you get better. But the CBC has given us an alleged comedy show, it's not funny, called Little Mosque on the Prairie, where the imam is this very good-looking hip guy, and all the Muslims are fun and lovable. The clever ones are the white ones, the less clever ones are the black ones. A little bit of implicit racism in there, you know. But the really stupid people are the Christians, who just go around either being ignorant or bigoted. And they've sold this show all over the world. It's a very typical mosque in Canada. Yeah, so we have that to fight. I've yet to see the episode where the youngest daughter is slaughtered and where another wife is brought in because the first wife's getting a bit too unattractive and can't give the man a child. I've never seen the episode where they sponsor international terrorism, but I am assured, I'm guaranteed, that in the Blu-ray DVD edition, it's on the special features. Let me tell you about how white liberal guilt has terrible consequences. This was made profoundly clear in Canada. Forgive me if I read this. During the 3-month trial of Muhammad Shafia, his wife Tuba Yaha, and their son Hamad. They were convicted, thank God, they were convicted of the first-degree murder of Zainab, who was 19, Sahar, 17, and Geeti Shafia, who was 13, and 50-year-old Rona Amir. The three teens were Muhammad Shafia and Tuba Yaha's daughters, Hamed's sisters. Rona was Muhammad Shafia's first wife. The four women had been drowned in their car in June 2009. Listen to this. The killers had chosen a canal in Kingston, a university town halfway between Toronto and Montreal, because they assumed that the local police would be less sophisticated and able than those in a larger city. This is how deep and planned the evil is. They'd also researched murder techniques on the internet and planned the honor killing, the Islamic honor killing, long in advance. Now, the case really shook the country, but it was only the most recent of a dozen murders in the last 12 years. And Canada only has 33 million people. The most recent of a dozen murders in the last 12 years, that's one a year, almost all involving Muslim patriarchs aided by sons, cousins, and wives. How could they? Killing young girls who wanted to be horribly Western by wearing nice clothes, dating nice boys, doing nice things, often, by the way, dating Muslim boys. Well, they were dating Muslim boys, just not the right boys that these killers wanted. In the Shafir episode, the three daughters had refused to wear the burqa, and one of them had even dared to wear a bikini. Good Lord. Rona Amir had been able to give her husband children, so he had taken a second wife, even though polygamy is illegal in Canada. It goes on. Believe me, there are numerous polygamous weddings, marriages that take place. The authorities know about it, and they refuse to intervene. Although not the girl's biological mother, Rona had loved them and tried to protect them, and so she had to die as well. But there's a greater point here, with more long-term consequences than this one single repugnant case. The authorities, this is very important, the authorities, be they police, politicians, social workers, media, are obsessed with appearing to be progressive and non-judgmental where Islam is concerned, partly out of a fear of being accused of Islamophobia, but also because, and I think this has to be said, because they genuinely believe that the white Christian West has more to learn from Islam than the contrary. I really believe this to be true. The Shafir girls had pleaded, it makes you weep, they had pleaded with their teachers for help. And while some teachers and some frontline social workers acknowledged the situation was potentially disastrous, the concerns evaporated, they just evaporated as soon as they reached middle management. As soon as anyone in administration, whether it was police or education or social work, found out, they said, let's let it go, it's their culture. So Muhammad Shafir, who had written of his daughters, and I will say the word, forgive me, may the devil shit on their graves, a father, was effectively permitted to commit mass murder. As soon as it took place, commentators, cringingly reluctant to link the crime in any way with Islam, every euphemism they could employ. The moments after the verdict was announced, the lead detective, and he did a good job, he did a good policing job, but the lead detective in the case told the police, quote, domestic violence is a terrible thing. Well, it is, but this wasn't domestic violence. And we've just had, I mentioned to you, Little Mosque on the Prairie, we've just had the lead actor from Little Mosque on the Prairie, who's married to the number 2 at English language CBC. How the circles form, eh? Who's on a radio ad saying, as the man who plays the good-looking imam in Little Mosque on the Prairie, domestic violence is wrong. We know that. That's why it's illegal in the Western world. This was an honor killing. It's different. We have never approved of domestic violence. You enshrine it in your legal system in the Islamic world. It was yet another example of a psychosis that has as at its epicenter Pakistan, but extends to most parts of the Islamic heartland and many in the Muslim diaspora. Look, it's a self-evident truth that not all Muslims behave like this, but it's also a self-evident truth that more than 90% of people who do behave like this are Muslim. It's like this nonsense about terrorism. Oh, you say all Muslims are terrorists. No, I've never said such a thing. But I do say the vast majority, invariably, the bulk of terrorism is committed by Muslims in the name of Islam. I'm not saying that, they are. Maybe it will be a basic courtesy for me to believe them. They're empowered by Quranic teaching, by Sharia law. They're not doing something in spite of their faith. When a Christian commits a crime, it's in spite of Christian teaching. When a Jew commits a crime, it's in spite of Jewish teaching. I'm sorry. When Muslims commit honor killings, it's not in spite of, it's because of Islamic teaching. When 16-year-old Aqsa Parvez was murdered in Canada in 2007, I think it was, by her Pakistani father and brother. Care Canada, yeah, we have the version too, our own special version. Care Canada told the gullible that, quote, it's important not to generalize. There are cases of violence across all faiths and cultures. Yeah, we never said otherwise, but actually when it comes to honor killings, almost unheard of outside of Islam, and the small number that have occurred in Hinduism and Sikhism are isolated and universally condemned within those cultures. When I see the mass ranks of Canadian Muslims marching along the streets of Toronto and Montreal saying no to honor killings, I may think again. It won't happen, don't hold your breath. Look, it's not just about honor killing. The country I'm from, Britain, we now have a whole plague of rape gangs. Gangs of young Muslim men throughout the country, one even in Oxford recently, such a quiet, beautiful place, where young women, young white women are groomed, raped, drugged, and turned into prostitutes. Over and over and over again. Even conservative tabloids like the Daily Mail will print the pictures of the men, they're all of Pakistani origin, or 99% of them, with their names, but they won't say the magic word, Muslim. They can't say the word. Now, if it happens to be a Norwegian mass murderer who's a Freemason, who says in his manifesto, I have no relationship with Christ, I haven't been to church in 17 years, I actually support abortion rights and gay marriage, but you'll call him a Christian as soon as you can, and you'll continue to call him a Christian as time goes on, even though he's far from being one. But if someone commits an honor killing or an act of terror and says, I did it in the name of Islam because I'm a Muslim, you will still find a way to say, it's the fault of the Jews. I don't know what's going to happen in Canada. We have a heroic fight back. We have people like I mentioned, Ezra Levant and Mark Stein, who you probably know of here as well, but he's one of ours. We have a government, a sort of conservative government, that is very good on this issue, and a wonderful immigration minister, Jason Kenney, who is prepared to say no to extremism. We have a Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who was the first person to say no to Hamas. Long before the Americans got into it, we said no to Hamas as soon as they won. We're not backing you anymore. We're taking all the money away. So there is great hope. But the problem is, amongst so many people, the mass indifference, engineered by media. Everyone is the same. Relativism. Fundamentalism's the problem here, not the particular religion. Well, the next time a fundamentalist Quaker or a fundamentalist Catholic or a fundamentalist Unitarian tries to cut my head off or blow my plane up, I'll start to believe them. Until then, just shut up. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here and to meet people. I mean, I've never met Pam, but Pam's been on my show many times. Never actually met her, now I've met her. Robert I have met before, but other people I've never met before. The work you're doing really is extraordinary. And I want to end with an anecdote, and I don't use this in any way to be exclusive. I'm a Catholic. I mean, if you're not, that's your problem, but I'm a Catholic. I'll pray for you. But I won't threaten to cut your head off. But one of the great influences, inspirations in my life has been a man called Thomas More. He's a saint. He was Prime Minister of England. He was called Chancellor, but he was Prime Minister of England. He was one of the great public intellectuals, brilliant, known throughout the world, and he had everything, really. And then King Henry VIII decided he wanted to take a different wife. And that was really the issue. It wasn't actually the Reformation. It was just about marriage. And Thomas More said, you can't do this, Your Majesty, you're already married. And anyway, they fell out. And More was arrested. He lost everything. He lost all his money, his power. His family weren't allowed to see him. He knew he was going to die. And he was interrogated. He wasn't physically tortured, but he was interrogated night after night after night. And the last interrogation before he was executed, before they did cut off his head, he was taken from the Tower of London to Lambeth Palace, and he sat there, thin, bearded by this point. And in front of him was the new Prime Minister, Thomas Cromwell, the Duke of Norfolk, the most powerful aristocrat in the country, the Archbishop of Canterbury, when that really meant something. And they sat there and they harangued him more than an hour. And he just wouldn't say anything, just wouldn't say anything. And at the end, as they were packing up, the Duke of Norfolk said to him, oh, for goodness sake, he said, this is pride, he said, because look, we're in the majority. Look, Thomas, we're in the majority. And for the first time, Thomas More, his eyes opened up. There was a new clarity in them. And he looked up and he gazed right at them. And he said, well, he said, knowing he would die in the morning, if the gates of heaven, if the windows of the afterlife could open now, you would see that no, I'm in the majority. No matter how persecuted and alone and isolated you may feel when you leave here and you go back to your homes, remember, decency, goodness, integrity, and morality, we are in the majority.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I wanted to pick up on one thing that Michael said a few minutes ago. He referred to the rape gangs in Britain, and it really is astonishing. At Jihad Watch, I cover these things all the time, and there's so many stories I lose track of these gangs of Muslim men who kidnap non-Muslim girls, and they force them into prostitution. And a clue to this, actually two clues, I discovered last summer when a Kuwaiti, actually termed a feminist legislator, a woman in the Kuwaiti parliament, she made a speech saying that the practice of sex slavery really ought to be revived, that it was perfectly in accord with Islamic law, that the Quran chapter 4 verse 3 says that a man can have up to 4 wives as well as have sexual relations with the captives that his right hand possesses, and that those are women who are captured, who were the wives of the non-Muslims who were killed in battle with the Muslims. They can be legitimately taken and pressed into sexual slavery. She said that she had checked with the imams about this, and they said this was fully in accord with Islamic law. Now, while this story was making the rounds, and it was sort of unbelievable, and people were saying, no, that can't be true, come on, or she must be some kind of nut, then an imam from Egypt, I believe it was, came out completely independently and said essentially the same thing. And because it's in the Quran that you can have the captives your right hand possesses, this is something that no Muslim can question. Even if it's a dead letter in most parts of the world today, it is something that any Muslim can, like these two Muslim leaders, can say, well, this really ought to be revived, and they can make a case for it. Now, this is Islamic law. Islamic law allows for slavery. It allows for the capture of infidel women and their use in this way. Reliance of the Traveler, the Manual of Islamic Law that I referred to before and that Pamela referred to before, actually says that a woman who's captured in battle, her marriage is immediately annulled. And then she can be pressed into this kind of slavery. This is in Islamic law. Islamic law, Sharia, allows for this. It allows for honor killing, as I explained before. It allows for the denial of the freedom of speech that David Wood came up against. It allows for the denial of the freedom of conscience. Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, he said, if anybody changes his religion, kill him. And the Islamic law in all the schools of law, all across the world, mandates the death penalty for apostasy. So that this is something that Noni and others who have left Islam, they have this over their heads for the rest of their lives. And there's nothing that can ameliorate it. Because even if you say, oh, no, you're generalizing and stigmatizing, and look, I have 25 Muslims over here who will never kill Noni and disapprove of it. Well, it only takes one over there. And God forbid anything happens to her or to any other person who exercises his conscience and decides to follow what he believes or she believes is true and leaves Islam. But this is Islamic law. Now, we know that there have been initiatives in many states to try to outlaw Sharia, to try to ban Islamic law, and to not allow it to be used. And we know that the Hamas-linked Muslim Brotherhood group, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and others like it, dedicated in their own words in that captured Muslim Brotherhood document that Robert quoted, to eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house. They have fought successfully against these measures in many states by claiming that Sharia is not political, it's not supremacist, it does not deny any of these freedoms, it's benign religious law, and if you outlaw it, you're restricting Muslims' religious freedom. Now, in reality, Sharia is political, it's supremacist, it asserts authority over non-Muslims, and it denies them basic rights, as well as denying women basic rights. And so, our next speaker is someone who has been in the trenches, in the fight, to raise awareness about these issues, to educate people about the true nature of Sharia, and to show people the implications of what happens if we admit it into our country. As the founder and head of the Virginia Anti-Sharia Task Force, he has been on the front lines of some of the key battles, here again, that you'll never hear about on the news, but are some of the most pivotal battles to protect our freedoms in America today. And so, it is an honor for me to introduce to you now James Lafferty of the Virginia Anti-Sharia Task Force.
Well, it happened again today. Every time I appear at one of these conferences with my friends, Pamela and Robert, someone will say to me, "Are you Pamela's bodyguard?" It's because I'm a growing boy. And I say, no, Pamela Geller protects me, and she protects all of us. I'm from the far-off land of Virginia. I head and founded the Virginia Anti-Sharia Task Force, not by choice. I have read a lot of the research done by Nina Shea on the Saudi madrasas, the international Saudi madrasas, only to find that I had one a couple of blocks from my home, operated by the Saudi government. On the title it says Embassy of Saudi Arabia. And my wife and I went to a Board of Supervisors meeting in Fairfax County, Virginia. And you can see it on YouTube, I think. And we asked, why was Fairfax County leasing property to people who advocate the killing of Christians and Jews? And we got an awful reaction from, and I have to say it was bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats came down on us heavily. The chairman, see, in Washington, when you're a bad politician, you get promoted. And the chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Fairfax County is now Congressman Jerry Connolly. So he said that I had slandered Islam. Of course, the Board of Supervisors' role is to protect Islam. And he said I had slandered Islam, and he was very angry. And I said, and you, sir, are a traitorous liar. And it went downhill from there. I have seen and heard many of the same things about that you've heard from the other speakers, the confusion about Islam, where a lot of people see it as not just another denomination, sort of a group of Unitarians who are having a bad day. I don't think that at all. In our neighborhood, and I live in the Wahhabi corridor, I live right off of Route 7 in Virginia, Northern Virginia. The Dar al-Hijra Mosque is there, which is the 9/11 mosque. When I drop my son off at school, I stop for coffee in a coffee shop where the attack on the Pentagon was planned. And I make a point of sitting at that table. Because it is the crossroads of terrorism, Northern Virginia right now. Those who keep records of things say that right here in Dearborn, you have the largest enclave, but Falls Church is the second largest. And I have to tell you, we Virginians are rooting for you guys to keep that title. We fight every day and every night. I believe that the jihadists think that we have people who live in the county courthouse, because every time they apply for a permit, every time they show up for even the smallest detail, a bunch of our people show up too. Every time there is an auction of land, of a large property of land, and we know that they're going to be there, we show up for the auction. I try to do a lot of that myself, and I just say, if you buy this land here, you're going to be seeing a lot of me. And we make sure that what we do is legal. We're not threatening in any way, but we make sure that they know that we're going to play an active role in any of this. And that's what I encourage all of you to do here. We've been able to stop a lot of this before it gets to the point where Mr. Muse and Mr. Yerushalmi have to get involved. We've been able to beat them at places like the Planning Commission in Fairfax County, where we just show up and we bring some of our friends, like Glenn Beck. And they're not ready for any of that. They're not ready to be famous. We make sure that their pictures and names are distributed in evangelical and friendly Catholic churches. I believe evangelicals, Catholics, and Jews are going to save this country. They call us the people of the book. And I know many of you have read that book. And it ends great. The ending is great, okay? And we think that we know how that book ends, so we're confident about dealing with them. But I would ask you, along with all that you've heard here today, and you've heard some really sad, alarming things, that you take heart. They can be beaten. We can beat them. I mean, one of the things I suggest you do is read Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals. As a conservative, that's a strange recommendation for me to make. But it is a great guide on grassroots organizing. And we use many of those same tactics to fight the very people that Alinsky was trying to help. So use some of that, but organize, organize, organize. And when they have a hearing, any sort of public meeting, show up. When they have, when you can meet with someone, talk with the political leaders, tell them how concerned you are about this, and you're going to watch them and watch how they vote. And just make sure they know that they're not getting away with anything. Look at their political contributions, which is what we do. Go through the Federal Election Commission reports, if it's a federal official, or the local, they have some sort of disclosure they have to do. Look at the people who are giving them money, because 9 times out of 10, that's going to tell you who's owned by the Saudis or the jihadists or whatever breed they are. And just pay attention to that. We can win. You know, this is a country that was founded by miracles, and we may need another one right now, but we can do it. And we're counted on to use our wisdom and our power to fight these people. And I would just encourage you, learn all that you can, but at some point, it's okay to stop learning and to start fighting. And we need to start the fight yesterday.
What's interesting with Jessica Mokdad, and there are certain trends that you need to pay attention to in America, is Laura Reckart was the lead prosecutor in the Noor al-Maliki case. Noor al-Maliki was targeted by her father, who ran her over and ran over her boyfriend's mother together. It was the first successful prosecution in the United States of America based on honor killing and honor violence. It's a very significant case. This prosecutor, who knew nothing about Islamic teaching, knew nothing about honor killings, she said that the prosecutor's office became Noor's family. because Noor was fighting to get away from the oppressive subjugation and terror in her household by her father. And it was a successful prosecution on honor killing. Laura Reckart was enormously disappointed that it was not a first degree, that it was a second degree murder. And of course, the utter gall on her father's part, wanting the defense wanting the death penalty, so they could say that they were pursuing the death penalty for racist reasons, so he could kill Noor al-Maliki based on Islamic teaching. But if you were to prosecute based on that teaching, then you're a racist. Yes. Now you look at a Laura Reckart who said, while she was investigating this case, she was shocked at the fear in the community, that women were afraid to talk, that they never put Noor's best friend on the stand because they knew that her life wouldn't be worth a plug nickel. And after they successfully prosecuted the Noor al-Maliki case, they get every day emails from women in trouble that don't know what to do, Muslim women. So let's look at a Laura Reckart and support her, and you look at a Bill Contaldo, who's a coward, who knew immediately that Jessica Mokdad was an honor killing, who was on record. Of course, if you go to the Detroit Free Press, that article where he went on and said this was an honor killing, that the father killed her because she was too westernized, that article's scrubbed. It's gone. It's not only scrubbed, it's scrubbed from the Wayback Machine, too. The Internet Archives. So when you look at this room, and I will tell you that I'm overwhelmed and thrilled by this room, because you'll notice there are no politicians here. You know, the mayor, Conyers, local officials, we're all at the backlashophobia. We're at the pro-honor killing rally earlier today. But they're on the wrong side. They're on the wrong side of righteousness, and you have to get behind politicians that get it. You have to get behind politicians that understand it. What you're witnessing here, what we have here is really the stages, the various stages. Mr. Corrin speaks of Canada, speaks of the UK. Noni speaks of the Middle East, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and the Islamization. And my next speaker, I would like to say, I have very, very few heroes, if any. But my next speaker is truly my hero. I admire him so deeply and so enormously. He is a giant among men. You know, we hear a lot about Sudan, and we hear a lot about Darfur, and we hear a lot about George Looney, you know, out there, you know, with Sudan, standing outside the embassy, Sudan, never speaking of root cause, never speaking about the jihad in Darfur, the millions of victims. And I really believe that if not for Simon Dang, we wouldn't know what was going on there. If not for Simon Dang under the Bush administration, he'll speak to this and what he can accomplish under the Obama administration, there would have been no referendum. The South voting, 99% voting to secede from the Islamic North after decades of jihadi wars, land appropriations, cultural annihilation, and enslavement. He walked barefoot through the Senate to get the attention of senators. He walked from New York, the UN, to Washington on the Freedom Walk. There is no one, there is no warrior greater than the son of kings and slave, former slave, Simon Dang. Simon?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having us here. And most important, let's give applause to all these speakers here. They've done a wonderful job. Most important, I would like to thank all of you by being so patiently enough and being with us here today, even that knowing that in your heart that you will not walk out in this room today happy to see or to hear from that you attend a good conference, because you will walk out being afraid that you attend the conference which is bashing and lashing Islam. in my opinions, this kind of conference, it is not an anti-religion. It is not designed to bash and lash Islam. In my opinions, as a victims under the Islamic law, the Sharia law, this kind of conference is designed to bring up things that happens under the umbrella of Islam, in which that nobody, especially here in America, have a decently of gut to tell the truth about what crime being committed in the name of Islam. This kind of conference, in my opinion, it helped people like me, the victims that happen to be silenced because nobody wants to talk about how they are being victimized, because that person will be afraid to be called that you are anti-Islam and you are Islamophobic. This kind of conference, it gives victims like me the voice to speak on behalf of those Southern Sudanese Christians, infidels that they call it, a chance to speak of what they cannot speak for themselves or what is happening in that part of the world. My fellow human beings and my fellow Americans, this kind of conference is a wake-up call. If you don't allow them to be said, then you're still living in a dream without knowing what is coming to you, even that you know what already have come to you. This kind of conference, it is to expose things that being advocates and being taught in the mosque. And I go back to where I come from, in the part of US, in New York, when the blind Sheikh Umar Abdurrahman was teaching in Brooklyn, in the mosque, that telling his fellow followers, Muslims, that it is you, the one. You are the lucky ones who made it here in America to bring down the infidels. You are the ones who will bring down American, and you are the one who will build the mosques here in the US. He was telling the truth to his fellow Muslims. But nobody at that time took that blind sheikh, an old man, that seriously, that he have a mission, or he is on the missions, for God's sakes. It was the same blind sheikh who came through Sudan, come to the United States with the Sudanese documents given by the Islamic government in Khartoum to come and bring down the infidels, or to cut the head of the infidels. How I know it? Because I was being called an infidel in that country. It was Umar Abdurrahman who went and tried to bring down the World Trade Center, the first one. And he couldn't make it. And probably he regret that the job would not happen under his watch, so that he will go down as a hero. This kind of conference is bringing and waking you up against, because what will come tomorrow will not shock you to say that, I wish I would have wake up. Yes, of course, when an American government and persecutors put the blind sheikh behind bars, they went and then went to sleep again. They said the job is finished. He's behind bars, nothing is going to happen again. Guess what? My fellow human being, they came and you was watching and you were sleeping because you are so naive. The World Trade Center was attacked, the Pentagon was attacked, and American was attacked. It was a jihad. It was not done by the blind sheikh because the blind sheikh is already behind bars. It was done by the people who never even met the blind sheikh itself. That gives you the magnitude of the problem that in hand coming to you. But here again, who want to stand up and say that, no, I saw it, then I'm not going to go to sleep again. Being you Americans so naive always, all you are busy on is to spend $2 billion a week to protect, and tomorrow will be an Islamic government in Afghanistan. That is what you're doing. Then why should I be talking about that? Let me speak of what happened to my peoples and what happened to me personally. In Sudan, probably most of you come to know Sudan about what happened in Darfur because the crimes in Darfur happened on the Muslim peoples. Yes, we went and tell it as it is and given it the right name as a genocide. Of course, I was myself as a victim knowing that no child should go through what I went through. I was advocating on behalf of the Muslim because we have to protect all human rights, regardless of being Buddhist or being a Muslim or being a Christian or being a Jewish. All of them are human beings. But what you didn't do as Americans and what you didn't do as the West, you didn't rise up when the crime was being committed by the Muslims on the Christians. This is the double standard. And I will, if you allow me to elaborate or to give you a little bit why I call it double standard. It was the same government in Khartoum, the Islamic government, the government that supported Osama bin Laden, not supporting him, creating Osama bin Laden. The government brought Sheikh Umar Abdurrahman here. In other words, the government that behind bringing down the World Trade Centers, even that we didn't went after them in Khartoum. I don't know why. If they are the one who brought Osama bin Laden, they are the one who give the blind sheikhs to come to you to attack you. And indeed, they managed, and we left him alone. What I want to say here, it is the same government that is slaughtered 400,000 Muslims in Darfur. And the whole world call it by the right name as a genocide. It is true. Killing a human being is a murder. Killing 3 people, 4 people is a massacre. Killing 400,000 is a massacre. And my people, the Southern Sudanese, were so angry. They could not believe the double standard that happening, especially to us here and to you as an American. Are we not human beings like them, like any other persons? 3.5 million Southern Sudanese was slaughtered by the same government, and nobody said nothing. 3.5 million was slaughtered in the name of Islam by the war as a jihad, because that is what is being designed. Since those 3.5 million happen to be Christians, being slaughtered under umbrella of Islam, under umbrella of so-called jihad, then who have an audacity to go and talk about it because you don't want to be accused you are anti-Islam? 7 million Southern Sudanese was forced out of their country and become refugees, the biggest and the largest refugees since World War II. And some of you probably become to know the lost boys and the lost girl of Sudan. These are the peoples a tiny people I call them, when their parent being perished, they wander walking from southern Sudan all the way to Ethiopia and back to Kenya and then end up here. Believe it or not, if you find one of them, give yourself 5 minutes and let them tell you what they went through. Don't take it from me. These are the peoples that when I go to southern Sudan tell me that, Simon, you're speaking on behalf of us because we cannot have a chance the way you are. You are the lucky victim. And when you are standing up against the mosque in New York being tried to be built on a ground zero, you are speaking on behalf of 13 million Southern Sudanese whom are saying no to that mosque not to be built on a ground zero because of, if we remember what Sheikh Umar Abdurrahman said, bring down America and build the mosques. And you are absolutely right. My fellow human being, I'm not an anti-anything. I have Muslims in my family whom are being forced to force Islamization because there are 3 million Southern Sudanese Christians who was forced to convert to Islam by force by the government in Khartoum. The Islamic government. Sudan is the only Islamic country in the entire Africa. And when we talk about the brutality, come under the umbrella of Islam Sharia, nobody knows it better than the people of Southern Sudan because we went through a lot. So for me to be given a chance to speak, of course, some others will say, he's so angry. You damn right. Some will say, he doesn't know what you talk about. Of course you're right, again. I was robbed from everything that a child deserves to be and the child supposed to learn from mom and dad. When I was 9 years old, I was kidnapped by a Muslim person, brought to northern Sudan, and he went and gave me away to his relative as a gift that he came from southern Sudan and he brought some gift. Of course, to most of you, you will be saying, no, that could not be. But today, you are hearing it from the same person that happened to be a gift. I'm not ashamed to tell you that, because if I don't tell you, it's not going to do me any good. It is inside me. I better release it out. Maybe that will give me a comfort when somebody say to me that, I support you, I admire your work. I was given away as a gift in which that I was forced as a child, 9 years old, to do the work that being always done by the donkey. I was forced even not to be looked at myself as a human being because I was not being considered as a human being. How do I know it? Because the family himself or themselves came to me that if I want to be treated like a human being, I have options. And that option is 3. 1, convert to Islam so that I will be treated as a human being and I will be taken to schools. 2, pick the Arab name, and the 3 ones is to become their son. Of course, as a human being, to be treated as a human being or to be looked as a human being, I did come close to take 2, Islam and the Arab name. But the difficult part was, how can I become their son? Knowing what I'm going through every day. Knowing that I have to be treated worse than animals. I have to rely on leftover. I have to be beaten constantly. I know only one word, yes, and yes to everything. Even kids will decide to, for fun, come and say, Dogal Abid, which is beat the slaves. And they will gang on me like playing footballs. And now they want to rob me for my identity. Of course, seeing I cannot tell them no, all I have to say, I will let you know. Hoping and assuming that one day somebody may come and realize that a child should not go through what I'm going through. I rely on hope and patience in God that tomorrow will be better than today. So people like me, when they are being given a chance to speak, especially when it comes to the crime being committed under the Islamic law, under the Sharia law, of course, I cannot hesitate to come and tell the truth, because I'm speaking on behalf of 13 or 16 million Southern Sudanese who went through a lot. So my fellow human being and my fellow Americans, living in a denial is not going to help us in the future. Living in a denial knowing that there is a big snake waiting to bite your child is not going to help you. Wake up, and wake up America. And thank you very much.
We have a few minutes now. If you have any questions, I don't know if we have a microphone for you, but please speak up, and we will repeat the questions from here. Make sure you let us know who you would like to answer the question if you have anybody particular in mind. Is that Rick in the back? Yeah.
I've been a candidate for the United States Congress. I'm a candidate for the United States Senate here in Michigan. I have been teaching about Islam at every Tea Party and every open event I get to. No one else that I know about, not even Alan West, beautiful person that he is, not even Sue Myrick, wonderful person that she is, that I adore. Who else has the courage to openly speak about Islam, as has been taught about this continent at this particular place? And why, and this is to you, Pamela, why is it that no other candidates, that no other politicians have the courage to openly speak about this subject and the threat that Islam is to this country, as well as to Canada, as well as to Europe, as well as to the world? Why do they not have the courage to do what I do and what you do?
Well, first I'd like to say, vote for Rick. Just briefly, politicians are looking in the rearview mirror. They are absolutely not a reflection of what's ahead. The NM media has been completely co-opted. The NM media is self-enforcing the Sharia. They will not offend. They will not criticize Islam. They are vicious when they don't like a candidate. Vicious. I mean, did you see this week? You see Obama going after Romney donors? That's an incredible, I mean, I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but my point is that we need brave men like you, and we need to support brave men like Rick. And that's the only way you're going to get things done, because if he gets legs, if Rick gets legs, they're going to go after him fiercely and viciously to destroy him. I mean, when Sarah Palin merely tweeted, you know, about the Ground Zero mosque, you know, being a stab in the heart, they went, I mean, it was vicious. It was a tsunami of bad media. The only good thing is I think that the American people increasingly do not trust the media. I mean, they see that the media is just completely and utterly corrupt, and in the case of Obama, criminally negligent in not vetting that candidate. That was my first book, The Post-American Presidency. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Let this opportunity go by. We have a great panel here.
We're looking for answers. I'm director of Act for Canada, which is Act for America, in Toronto chapter, new chapter. But I'm also director of No Islam in Schools. And we have a mosqueteria in Toronto. We've held demonstrations on the steps of the Toronto School Board. We've held protests in the streets. The first time the media came out, and we got good media exposure. The second time, very few media except for Sun News. Michael Corns covered it. After that, nothing. Attendance dwindled. How do we wake Canadians up? And how we can educate them, because we're going to use your resources and your material, because you've laid the path open. But what do we do now? How do we wake Canadians up? Sun News is doing a good job, but not everybody watches Sun News. And so we need to wake Canadians up. We can educate them, but we got to wake them up first. Well, how are we going to wake them up?
The only way you wake Canadians up is to have a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. But, you know, it's not. Look, you've got to remember that, and this doesn't only apply to Islam, this applies to many of the great issues, social issues such as marriage, defending the unborn. Most, and I use the word quite proudly, most normal people are raising their families, paying the bills, being good citizens. At the end of a working day, the last thing they want to do is get involved politically. It's the strange ones who go to the union meetings and the fringe meetings. I mean, it is. But you know what? They get things done. So let's not be too harsh on people who are just exhausted at the end of their working week. However, we have to be aware, and you know what's happening in the West. We're being killed with kindness, because even though we have this rising tide of Islam, which will not stop, it has no intention of stopping. Compromise is seen as victory. Every time we say, let's sit down and talk about this, and maybe we can work out a compromise, they think that they have won. People still have their very large TV and their iPad and their iPod and their new car and their 2 vacations. And it's what Solzhenitsyn was talking about so many years ago. Don't you understand, you fools? You're going to lose everything because you're so comfortable. So I don't really have the direct answer. I think you do it one by one by one by one. Anything you can do. If you can broadcast, broadcast. If you can blog, you blog. If you can speak to someone in the office, speak to someone in the office. Personal witness. Not in an aggressive way. Reach out to people whenever you can. Please never be frightened. I mean, we've gone past that, surely. I mean, really, you can be... If you really think that if you just hide away, it will all be okay? We've learned throughout history that is never the solution to any response to evil. So that's what I would say. But don't think by some grand gesture, some grand campaign, we can change everything. It's going to be gradual. Just the way, shall we say, the other side have won things gradually, yes. We have to take them back gradually.
Well, they're already parking their cars outside our house.
Yes, sir.
Positive note on Canada. From where we sit over here, it looked like the Canal murders, at least the final verdict, was well handled. I compliment Ontario and Canada for handling that. Question on Canada, though. Is it true that provincially Ontario and Quebec had, for a period of maybe a decade, a Sharia experiment that they decided to end and did a one law for all in those two provinces? Is that correct?
First of all, it's wonderful that in a room full of Americans, we were talking about Canada. I love this. The Canadian Empire is here to stay. Get used to it. Learn French and skate. No, that's not true. There was a provincial report from a socialist state legislature, if you like, a provincial MPP, recommending certain aspects of Sharia law. I think it probably would have gone through, but there was enough popular protest that the premier... He probably wanted to pass it, but he realized he couldn't, and so he backed down on that. And in Quebec, look, if anywhere in Canada is going to respond to all this, it's Quebec. The French aren't as nice as the English. That's just a fact. Yeah. No, I'm not even trying to be flippant here. You're going to see this in Europe too. Yeah. The British tend to say, "Oh well, it's okay. We'll have a cup of tea." The French, you see, 20%. Look, I don't applaud the vote for the Front National. Even Le Pen's daughter is not to be trusted. There's still a tinge of fascism there. However, the 20% of people who supported her in the presidential election, they're not fascists. They're just saying, can you please try and deal with Islam in our country? Please. I mean, for goodness sake, there were French Jews voting for her because she was a fascist? No, enough is enough. In Quebec, you're actually seeing some resistance now. They play hardball. That's not always positive. Sometimes it can exhibit itself as racism. But when it comes to Islam, I think they're saying we're not going to stand for it. So, but no, there's no real Sharia law in either province. But there'll be more attempts to install it. There are, though, polygamous marriages, certainly.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
My question is for the gentleman from Virginia. I come from a city in Michigan that just built a mosque last year, but I didn't start investigating Islam until just this past February. And I'm going back and looking at the newspaper articles about it, and I'm seeing that the land was donated. They didn't mention the funding. They merged congregations with Nation of Islam. How do I investigate where the funding came from? See who holds funding.
The first thing I would do is find some friendly realtors on your side and talk with them. They have the expertise. They can explain what the records are and how to read them and everything else. We rely heavily on people like Denise Lee, who's sitting here from Virginia, who understands real estate, and then we have auctioneers who call us and tell us that, hey, we had some of those people at our auction today. And we also have school headmasters now who will call us and say they were in here trying to buy my school with cash. They'll come in with a big bag of cash and try and buy the school outright. That's what you do, and then you learn it as you go through it. My background is in investigative reporting, and I did a lot of this, so I understand some of it, but it's not that hard. If the politicians can learn it, you can. And you just do that. You just compile details and then go after them with it when you have it. Now, where you take it, it's hard. The media, as Pamela says, the media isn't interested. There's always something wrong with your story, you know. And I would take it. I would go on the blogs and do the things and make sure Pamela knows about it, and just go at them heavily. But don't give up, and just keep on them.
That Mosqueteria story really came up through the internet, really came up through the blogs. Yes, you had media there the first time because it went so viral, and then it got quiet. So what? I mean, every time the left does a rally or Islamic supremacists do a rally, they have 5 people there, they triumph it. It's a triumph every time, even if it's just the mother and the son. You have to do the same thing. You're not going to hit a home run every single time. So what? And you send us the pictures. This is the stuff that we traffic, and we traffic in the news that the media will not report. Yes. Miss.
To answer her question, Farmington Public Schools, in a backroom deal, Pamela, you know about this because we told you about it, sold an empty school to the Islamic Cultural Association in a backroom deal. No bids, never put it up for sale. Went back and checked out the deed. Go check the deeds and see who holds it. We found that Nate was a deed holder of their other school, Huda School in Franklin. We know who they are.
CARE, supported by CARE.
They were supported by CARE at the meeting. We were vilified. You have to...
We have a lawsuit. We're on appeal.
Yeah, you just have to go and check the records, as was said, and see who the people are and what they're doing. And it's, it's very, we've been, one other thing, we have done that. We also know that a local conservative synagogue, one of the largest local conservative synagogues, invited Imam Mustafa El-Turk to speak on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. They were told, we protested, some of us were almost arrested. The ADL, who's not our friend,
I'm their #1 atheist.
Yeah, the ADL, even on their own website, talks about how anti-virulent he is, how anti-Semitic he is, and they still let him in as a guest speaker on the Bema in a conservative synagogue. You just have to get the word out. It's going on around here all the time.
And distribute information like that widely. In Virginia, we had pictures of the headmaster at the school and his family. They go out every weekend and take pictures of the bridge supports, like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and a lot of the big bridges. And the Maryland State Police got pictures of them on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And we took that and we distributed it in about a 5-mile radius around the different things they were trying to do, different projects. And it organized people, it got them really riled, and that's an important part of what we're trying to do, is educate but also mobilize.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Yes, on the issue of mobilizing and catalyzing, we have an opportunity here in Michigan to take what has been imparted by this heroic panel to try to impress upon our governor and our state Senate and our state house that it's time in Michigan, because Michigan is one of the states in play, as Pamela has mentioned, that has been trying to pass two compatible measures to insulate. That's all we're seeking to do, is to insulate our Constitution, to protect it from the encroachment, undermining, and eventual evisceration by the imposition of foreign laws. So I urge you to contact, I have a sheet if you're interested, to contact, it's being held up actually. They're trying to choke it back in committee, but it's being very courageously spearheaded by Representative Dave Ajema and by Senator Roger Kahn. They need our support. I've got the numbers. There's going to be an important conference. You mentioned the Center for Security Policy. The Vice President will be one of the panelists at this forum. I urge you all to become engaged, and again, to take the information that we've learned and to catalyze it into meaningful and effective action. And I wanted to ask you, can you tell us about the ICNA campaign that's taking place around the country to try to impede the efforts of states that are trying to fight the imposition of foreign law?
Numbers? ICNA is doing that. There are a number of them that are doing it.
ICNA is doing a $3 million billboard campaign. Got Sharia, Sharia, got questions, get answers. What we've done is exactly that Islam ad that was on Robert Muse's presentation. I didn't invent that ad, okay? The sun and the grass and the trees. I took their ad, Come to Islam, the exact same ad, and flipped the language. Leaving Islam? And so what I did was with the Sharia campaign, Sharia, got questions, get answers. We mirrored the ad, Sharia, got fatwa, get answers. Call 1-800-LIVE-FREE. And if you called the number, 1-888-LIVE-FREE. If you called the number, Robert Spencer answered. Okay, it's a propaganda campaign. Now, it got media. Getting media is a way of getting the message out. We consider ourselves, the work that I do is like guerrilla media. That's what I do. I don't have $3 million. I only bought one city, but Kansas City, right across the street. Sharia, got questions. Sharia, got fatwa. You understand? A little inside baseball. It torments them. But it also removes the sting from what they're doing. And this is what we have to do. You don't need a lot of money. And each one of you are your own one-man media organizations. You have email lists. You have friends. You do things. You play tennis, tiddlywinks. I don't know what normal people do. I just work all the time. But you meet people and you talk to people. Now, you can't always reach everybody. There are people that are married to their dogma. But last week we were at Temple University. Noni, Simon, Robert, Islamic Apartheid Week, and I will tell you, it was a zoo. If you want to see what's going on, it will shock you to your core of what's going on college campuses. It's complete fascism. I mean, they came in, they took 75% of the seats. The people that really wanted to hear us speak could not get in. They were ridiculed and made fun of by these protesters, by these fascists, these jackboots. And yet, even at the end, a girl came up to me and said, I just want you to know, I was here with the opposition, but I stayed, and you flipped me, you turned me. Now, what this girl is going to do in her life, you don't understand your power. You don't understand your influence. There's never going to be CBS News where you reach millions of people, but you throw that pebble in, and you have no idea the ripples, how many people you reach. You have no idea how powerful you are, and you have to exert that power. Now, you have to.
I want to say one other thing, how fortunate we are in Michigan, because leading the vanguard in this lawfare arena, we have the Thomas More Law Center based in Ann Arbor. Yes. Fortunate. I know that they've worked with you, but in leading the fight in this effort.
We have time for just one more.
Rob was going to say one
Oh,
thing.
sorry.
You know, that whole program, it's really an information operation program, what they're trying to do. And one of with the American Freedom Law Center, and I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan here as well. In fact, I used to be the senior counsel at Thomas More for 12 years, and I started up the American Freedom Law Center with my colleague David Yerushalmi, who is truly the expert in this area. And Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy is on our advisory board. And one of the things that he's done, as I mentioned briefly, he created this education program, a video education program, so you can be educated about truly what the Muslim Brotherhood's about, what Sharia is about. It's a video program. We've got it posted up on our website right now, the first in our featured media, AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. So that's a great resource for you to be able to counter this information operation that is that's going on.
Mr. Muse, what are the numbers of the legislation in the State House and State Senate here in Michigan?
Here.
Okay, you can speak to the lady here and she'll have those lists. Let's have one more. Sir in the middle there.
Yes, good evening. It's a thrill to see all of you live in person. I'm
likewise.
Canada. The second thing I wanted to mention was that the Mosque area story was broken by my friend Blazing Camper, who's sitting in the back. Yeah. My question goes to Mr. McCarthy. Your president has said something about wanting to institute UN resolutions and laws about human rights and enshrine them within the laws here in the United States. True. Now, does that have any legs to it whatsoever?
Agenda 21.
I don't know. Who's that to?
Who are you asking?
Is that to me?
Who are you asking, please?
The lawyer. That's you.
Oh, Muse, you want to hear from me? All right. Well, I mean, certainly the courts and some justices, as we've seen in the Supreme Court, have been looking to international law to make determinations. But our Constitution specifically has a supremacy clause. And in that supremacy clause, it makes the U.S. Constitution the supreme law of the land. And so these other foreign laws cannot trump our fundamental constitutional rights. Should not trump our fundamental constitutional rights. But if you remember, Justice Ginsburg recently gave an interview when she was lauding a foreign constitution over the U.S. Constitution, South Africa. So, I mean, technically, under our Constitution, it's the supreme law of the land, and these other laws cannot trump those rights. But depends on who the justices are, and elections have consequences in terms of who's going to be on the bench. So if you have concerns about foreign laws, you ought to ensure that you vote for presidents who want to put justices on the bench who want to stick to our U.S. Constitution, the text of the Constitution, and not look beyond to these foreign laws. But it can't trump a statute itself or anything else cannot trump our Constitution, the supreme law in the land.
Thank you all so much for coming. Don't waste what you have learned here. Don't waste what you have heard here. You all are the soldiers in this battle. As Pamela always says, whenever we're speaking, I hear her say this. I'm going to say it now. This is a war that is not going to be fought on battlefields. This is a war for our justice, our freedom, and for human rights. It is a war not with guns and bombs. It is a war in our communities, and we are the soldiers. It is up to us.
I want to thank you all for coming. It was really thrilling. You give us all hope. Michael will be outside signing his book for purchase. Yes, Michael? My books are outside. If you need any advice on something, feel free to come to us. And remember, if you're working on something, send it to the blogs. We get it out there and we get it done. Fight the great fight.